The story began with a man telling a boy named Ashto to leave their home and become the Lord of Oberstein. Soon after, in the Oberstein territory of the Big Balog Kingdom, Ashto found that there was nothing around. He decided to search for water and a place to stay. Using a search spell, Ashto discovered a nearby water source. He went to the river and fetched some water. He also needed a place to stay and food, but he had to keep moving since he was close to the river. Just then, he noticed birds freely flying around and small animals on the tree branches. He still couldn't believe he had been told to become the lord of this darn forest. In the biggest kingdom of the continent, Big Balog, Ashto was born as the second son into the Estrella family, the most powerful royal military and noble house. His elder brother Ludger earned fame as the Thunder Emperor, becoming the youngest commander in history. Sherry, his younger sister, quickly rose to become the kingdom's strongest mage after joining the military, showcasing her exceptional ice powers. The family took great pride in Ludger and Sherry, both having strong affinities for electricity and ice, respectively. As for Ashto, he was different. His elemental affinity was nature, unlike his siblings. Despite his efforts in swordsmanship, he remained average. Even with a doctorate in herbology, there were always mages more intelligent than him. Despite any admiration from others, his father never praised him. Ludger seemed only half-hearted in his kindness, and Sherry no longer bothered to talk to him. However, there was once a person who enjoyed Ashto's unexciting magic. That person was Mayuri, Ashto's childhood friend who stood by him during tough times. She visited to celebrate Ashto earning his doctorate. As a gift, Ashto gave her a necklace, marking the moment he decided to propose to her. He didn't mind being an ordinary person as long as Mayuri remained by his side. His plan was to propose when he turned 18, become self-reliant, work as an herbalist, and spend his life with Muti. Regrettably, Ashto's father arranged for Ludger to marry Muti. It was a political union aimed at strengthening ties between military families. Ashto understood it wasn't his brother's fault, but the idea of Mayuri becoming his brother's wife was too much for him to bear. Ashto summoned up his courage and headed to his father's office. However, when he arrived, he found it difficult to speak, and his father, sensing his silence, urged him to leave. Eventually, Ashto gathered the strength to express his desire to renounce his membership in the Estrella family. His father, taken aback, inquired if Ashto knew about Oberstein. Ashto remembered it as a forest filled with dangerous monsters. His father then revealed that Oberstein was a place where humans and other races had lived ages ago. Despite the lack of knowledge about the area, the Estrella family had been tasked with investigating it. Surprisingly, his father decided to grant Ashto the land, making him the Lord of Oberstein. It dawned on Ashto that his father had already orchestrated a plan to remove him from the family, and this revelation left him stunned. And that's how he found our protagonist in the middle of the forest. He chose not to dwell on the past, so he brought his tools to tidy up the area and try some farming. While walking, he discovered a large tree and decided to make it his base. Ashto then chanted a magic spell, and nearby roots began to move. What he created was a tree man. It opened its eyes and looked adorable. Ashto named it Wood. Wood smiled and started running around Ashto. Ashto then decided to gather some lumber to build a house. However, he didn't have enough hands and he wasn't sure what kind of lumber to use. Just then, Wood tugged at his coat and pointed in a certain direction. Ashto was amazed to find a Phoeba tree and wondered if Wood had understood him earlier. Wood simply responded with a smile. Ashto pumped himself up and used magic to cut down the tree. He understood that he needed a considerable amount of mana to tackle such a sturdy tree. He questioned how long his mana would hold out. The loud thud sounds persisted until Ashto depleted his mana entirely. Unlike Sherry, he lacked a mana recovery skill. To replenish his energy, he chose to sleep and requested Wood to keep an eye on him. Wood, concerned, expressed worry, but Ashto assured him it was just fatigue. Gradually, Ashto closed his eyes and slipped into unconsciousness, while Wood dutifully remained by his side as instructed. Not long after, Ashto woke up and heard a big noise. He looked around and saw Wood carrying a log. Wood stacked the logs and sighed. Ashto was amazed by Wood. Ashto realized he wasn't alone and picked up Wood. They spent their days cleaning the area. It didn't take Ashto long to notice he cut down too many trees. He had enough logs to build 10 houses already. Ashto then told Wood to stop cutting trees and build a house instead. But Wood was busy with something else. The nearby bushes started moving and Ashto wondered if it was a monster. He expected a monster because of all the loud noises. As he got ready to attack with his wand, a girl came out of the bushes and asked him to wait. She said she wasn't hostile at all. Ashto was surprised to see an elf. Elmina, the High Elf, introduced herself to Ashto. Then Ashto introduced himself as the new lord of the land. Elmina wondered if he was from the kingdom and Ashto confirmed it. She mentioned that she had checked the area, thinking a monster was causing the loud noises. As Ashto apologized for the noise, he suddenly realized that Elmina was a High Elf. An upper-class elf was casually wandering in the forest. Elmina explained that their village was nearby. Ashto was surprised to see a High Elf in the forest. as they were usually associated with upper-class status. Elmina mentioned that their village was nearby, making Ashto think the kingdom would be astonished to learn about High Elves settling in the forest. High Elves were rare, unlike regular elves who often worked as herbologists in the kingdom. While Ashto was fascinated by the idea of High Elves in the forest, Elmina revealed her reason for leaving. Ashto inquired, and Elmina began to fidget. She confessed to drinking all of the village elders' secret stash of alcohol, leading to her exile for 1,000 years. Elmina shared more details until she realized she might have revealed too much. Ashto felt disappointed after learning about Elmina's misadventure as a high elf. Elmina had changed the topic and wondered if Ashto would be okay alone in building a house. She said she was good with winds and knew a lot of things. Ashto thought for a while and ended up agreeing to her help because he knew Elmina would be disappointed if he said no. However, Elmina only wanted a place to stay after being exiled. The two then formally introduced themselves. The land reclamation continued, and after a few days they had made good progress. Ashto found Elmina helpful and planned to use her for other tasks that weren't related to construction. Elmina asked him what to do next, and Ashto explained that he needed some farm fields and a waterway to be self-sufficient. He also wanted a water reservoir connected to the river and asked Elmina for her help. Excitedly, Elmina started digging out the nearby soil, and Ashto was amazed by her magical abilities. Even though Ashto knew about farming and building, his main challenge was the lack of people. He was also running out of food. His stress faded away when he saw Wood's cute appearance, and he hoped to find skilled craftsmen. Before long, Ashto heard Elmina asking for help. Curious about what was happening, he was surprised to find heavily injured dwarves. Rushing to them, the dwarf in front requested medicine since they were attacked by a stray monster. Ashto invited them to his place and asked Elmina to fetch some water. In a treehouse, Ashto examined the wounds and planned to clean them thoroughly, hoping there was no poison. He explained that he was an herbologist. When the dwarf questioned why a human herbologist was in the deep forest, the query was ignored as Elmina arrived with clean water. Ashto assured them he would save everyone. Over the next few hours, he attended to the dwarves, starting with the severely injured and progressing to the lightly injured. After treating the dwarves, Ashto was thanked by August, who was currently leading the group. Ashto suggested they take a week to rest, relieved that everyone was okay. Curious, he asked for their names, and August introduced himself. August went on to recount their journey across Oberstein. They were searching for ores when they were unexpectedly attacked by a monster. They narrowly escaped and ended up near the river where they encountered Elmina. Fortunately, they managed to avoid a gruesome fate. August was curious about why Ashto and Elmina lived in the remote forest, to which Ashto responded that it was a long story. Of course, we are skipping it, and August couldn't believe someone so young had been through tough times. But Ashto was okay with it. He thought a self-sufficient life wasn't boring. He could do things he couldn't in the kingdom. August found Ashto reliable and decided on something. Since Ashto saved their lives, August and the other dwarves would help Ashto in the forest. Ashto was confused. August then planned to build houses and a smithy. He said the elder dwarves would lend their help, and August woke up the others. As Ashto tried to remind him to rest, he realized August mentioned they were elder dwarves, an extremely rare species and ancestors of the current dwarves. Ashto told them to rest for a week, but the dwarves didn't listen. Seeing elder dwarves and a high elf, Ashto was surprised by rare species in the remote forest. He had wished for some help and stopped overthinking when he noticed Wood's cute appearance. He concluded he was lucky. Meanwhile, Ashto's father dealt with paperwork until Ludger and Sherry barged into his office. He wondered what was wrong, and the two just glared at their father. Let's delve into the background of the Estrella family. They're a prominent noble house in the Big Balog Kingdom, and the current lord, Crimson Commander Azen, had a remarkable military career. He was considered equivalent to 1,000-foot soldiers, and despite his advancing age, he continued to grow stronger. However, there was one thing that could disturb this formidable figure. Azen inquired once again from his son and daughter about what was bothering them, with his voice faltering. In response, an angered Sherry marched towards Azen and forcefully hit the table. Ludger, also furious, demanded an explanation for why Ashto had been expelled from the family. Azen urged them to calm down, but Ludger, upset, declared that he would never approve of marrying Muti. Sherry, unaware of this, expressed her confusion. Ludger revealed that everyone knew about the close relationship between Ashto and Muti. He couldn't believe that Azen had disregarded Ashto's feelings and kicked him out of the house. Ludger blamed himself for not keeping a closer eye on Ashto due to his own busy schedule. Concerned, Azen asked Ludger to take a moment to catch his breath. Meanwhile, Sherry was shocked to find out that Mayuti and Ludger had gotten married. Ludger couldn't believe that Azen hadn't told Sherry about it. As Azen started making excuses, Sherry grabbed his shoulder tightly and threatened to turn him into a popsicle. Terrified, Azen decided to spill everything to the two. A few minutes later, Sherry accused Azen of going too far for a political marriage. Ludger couldn't imagine calling his subordinate sister-in-law. Aizen then remembered that Luna Maria, Muti's sister, was Ludger's adjutant. Ludger exclaimed that even Luna Maria would hate being in-laws. Aizen suggested deploying her somewhere else, but Ludger disagreed. The two men kept talking until Sherry interrupted and asked if Ashto had really been sent to the Oberstein territory. Aizen explained that Ashto had decided on his own to leave after learning about the engagement, so Aizen decided to give him the territory. Sherry then said she would take a vacation for at least 20 years. Aizen was surprised, but Ludger agreed with her idea. He suggested going on a vacation with Mayuri. Sherry liked the idea since Mayuri also needed to relax, and Ludger wished them to have fun. Aizen tried to stop them, but he only received a cold, menacing response. The Great Crimson Commander had been defeated. Days later, Ashto was surprised to see a large house, and Elmina was happy that they could finally leave the temporary root house. Ashto apologized to Elmina for the challenging experience, and he soon realized that the dwarves had worked on the house despite their injuries. August and the others downplayed the difficulty, mentioning they only needed 3 days to recover. Ashto was amazed to discover that a house originally planned for months was completed in just 4 days. August then informed him that they intended to build more houses since their friends were also on their way. He explained that other dwarves who had been on journeys would join them, and he planned to make Ashto's place their operational base. They expressed gratitude for Ashto's help and promised to look after him for the rest of his life. Without consulting Ashto, the dwarves decided to take care of him indefinitely. Elmina was pleased to have them, as the crafting skills of elder dwarves were renowned for being top-notch. Ashto was aware of this, but he didn't anticipate things getting more intense. Elmina also chose to invite some of her friends. Ashto gave up trying to stop them. While the dwarves constructed houses, Ashto surveyed a section of the land. He then used a magic spell to soften the dirt. He was relieved that he had learned some farming magic. As he contemplated what to build next, he suddenly heard a growl. He wondered if it was wood, but realized our little Groot couldn't talk. Ashto dismissed the strange sound as just his imagination. Soon after, Ashto finished creating a field and planting the seeds. He then used a magic spell to accelerate the plant's growth. With it, he could harvest several times more than usual. Also, plants grown with magic were much tastier than normal ones. He then decided to focus on a greenhouse first and planned to ask August and the dwarves about it. Ashto had gone to August and wondered if building a greenhouse next to the fields was possible. August assured him they only needed 2 days for the task. However, August also mentioned the difficulty of finding a specific item in the remote forest. Elmina noticed their frustration and inquired about the issue. Ashto then explained to her that he wanted to construct a greenhouse but lacked the necessary glass. Confused about its purpose, Elmina learned from Ashto that glass was needed to trap sunlight. August, eager to help Ashto protect his plants, expressed a desire to build the greenhouse. Elmina suggested an alternative, proposing the use of slimes as a replacement. It didn't take them long to gather some slimes. Elmina explained that slimes have a low body temperature, and when heated they become really hard. They then stretch the slime while heating it, and August worked on it until they finally obtained something resembling glass. Ashto expressed amazement at the elves' knowledge, and Elmina reminded him that she was a high elf. August was aware of the unique properties of slimes but hadn't considered using them as a replacement for glass. Ashto noticed that it was even clearer than real glass, and didn't break easily because it was flexible. August then exclaimed that they could not only build a greenhouse but also construct better houses. A few days had passed, and the greenhouse had been constructed. Ashto was quite pleased, even though the inside still seemed empty. Elmina came by to check on him, and Ashto thanked her for her assistance. He was impressed by the structure. Elmina, curious, explored the greenhouse and found various herbs in the field. Ashto was surprised that she recognized them, and Elmina, being a high elf rooted in the forest, mentioned her long life and vast knowledge. Despite her appearance, she was over 8,000 years old. Ashto also remembered that August was even older at over 9,800 years. During their conversation, Elmina offered to teach Ashto about herbs since he aspired to be an herbologist, and because they could be longtime friends. Ashto chuckled, and Elmina expressed her curiosity about the herbs humans used. As they chatted about exchanging knowledge, Ashto heard a slight growl. Distracted, he explained to Elmina that he had been hearing strange voices lately. Elmina couldn't hear anything and assumed Ashto was just tired from using magic for many days. Little did they know, something or someone was lurking nearby. Several days later, Ashto had grown accustomed to working in the greenhouse when an unexpected event occurred. An earthquake shook the surroundings, causing concern that the greenhouse might be damaged. To add to the surprise, a creature emerged behind Ashto, revealing the source of the recent forest commotion. This creature speculated whether Ashto was manipulating the mana on the ground. To Ashto's astonishment, a dragon materialized, interrupting the moment. Contrary to expectations, the dragon didn't appear menacing. Instead, it nonchalantly yawned while pondering how long it had been since a human ventured into the forest. The dragon felt fortunate to encounter someone with a similar affinity. Despite feeling scared, Ashto dropped to the ground trembling. Reassuringly, the dragon told him not to be afraid, as it had no intention of eating him. Deciding to assume a more human-like form, the dragon then took its human form, a beautiful woman with a deadly rack. She then wondered how she looked like. Ashto won't answer, so I will. You are beautiful, mommy. Woof woof, bark bark. The dragon clarified that she only wanted to have a conversation and offered assistance to help Ashto stand. Expressing a sudden craving for tea, she left Ashto confused. Ashto had introduced the dragon to the others, and Elmina was surprised to learn that the dragon was the legendary emerald dragon Murcielago. The dragon confirmed this and suggested they call her Shella instead. The High Elf and Elder Dwarf were amazed to encounter someone so rare, but Ashto pointed out that it was even more extraordinary than rare. He remembered that the Emerald Dragon was one of the 7 legendary dragons in the world, known for its immense power and revered like a god. Just as Ashto was getting used to being around a High Elf and Elder Dwarves, a godlike dragon appeared. Shella complimented the tea and wine, and Elmina proudly mentioned that it was a specialty from her village. Ashto then interrupted the conversation, asking Elmina about the wine, some boxes lying around, and unfamiliar elves. The 2 elves introduced themselves as Mage and Lunare. Elmina explained that they had come after she sent a letter. Ashto also noticed new elder dwarves in the vicinity, making him feel out of place as the only normal human. Shella had praised the elder dwarves' wine, and August had an idea. He suggested creating a brewery in Wheatfield. Elmina liked the idea and added a suggestion to have a grape garden. The dwarves and Elmina chatted, deciding that Ashto should be the one to grow the plants for them. Ashto was left surprised, and Shella, finding the situation amusing, giggled. Elmina then invited her to continue enjoying the drinks. The following day, Ashto felt tired after working on the wheat field alone. He was grateful that others were building houses and getting food. He also noticed a significant increase in his mana since he came to the forest. Just then, Shella appeared, asking what Ashto was up to. Ashto explained that he was taking a break after using his mana for the wheat field and grape garden. He mentioned having more work to do with the vegetable field and greenhouse. Ashto worked hard on his own, and Shella, seeing his effort, decided to help. She handed him something to eat, making sure he swallowed it. It seemed a bit weird. Ashto felt uncomfortable, wishing it was someone else. Shella then asked how Ashto was doing, and he suddenly felt lighter. She explained that her blessing would ensure he never had to worry about running out of mana, and his magic would get stronger. She said they were compatible because they both had a strong connection to nature. While Ashto looked confused, Wood started to tremble and grew in size. Surprisingly, Wood began talking, saying, I am Wood. Ashto was surprised and found it amazing. Shella explained that Wood grew because Ashto's magic had also grown. Ashto understood that Wood was happy about his growth and promised to work hard for him. Shella couldn't help but smile at the interaction between the two. She then reminded Ashto to continue working so she could enjoy delicious drinks in the future. Flustered, Ashto thanked her for his unexpected growth. Ashto then checked himself and noticed how his magic overflowed. He assumed he now had more mana than Sherry. Wood wondered if Ashto was happy, and Ashto lifted him up, agreeing that he was happy. However, he was a little scared about how his mana overflowed from his body due to the blessing from one of the legendary dragons. He then asked Wood what would happen to them in the future. The elves discovered that Wood's growth was due to Shella's blessing, leaving them surprised. Elmina became curious about Ashto's activities. He shared that he was testing his mana capacity and cast a growth spell on a grape sapling. The sapling quickly grew as tall as him, but trouble arose as the grape tree kept expanding. Elmina scolded Ashto for overusing magic, and though he tried to stop, the magic kept flowing. Elmina had to intervene by hugging him. The dwarves, drawn by the commotion, arrived and were astonished by the massive tree. They inquired about what had happened. As Ashto marveled at his increased mana pool, Elmina pointed out the blessing. Ashto jokingly wondered about the taste of the grapefruit and decided to try one. However, the tree kept growing, leaving Ashto and Elmina anxious. Ashto eventually exclaimed how delicious the grape was, claiming it surpassed normal grapes. Elmina and the others eagerly tasted the fruit, expressing their delight. Elves and dwarves alike joined in, appreciating the deliciousness of the grapes. August had announced a decision to take a break from work. He expressed the intention to create barrels and a brewery, praising Ashto's skills and hoping to apply them to wheat as well. Elmina then instructed Mage and Lunare to return to the village, gather more saplings, and present the elder with grape samples. She wanted Ashto to make the saplings grow to produce more wine. Ashto pointed out that there were other tasks besides making wine, emphasizing the need to clear the area before establishing a vineyard. He expressed concern about the workload. Elmina asked Mage and Lunare to gather interested helpers from the village, particularly female elves. Despite Ashto's attempt to object, Elmina assured him that everyone would follow his lead. The High Elves enthusiastically embraced the idea, and Ashto's plan to peacefully study medicine in the forest seemed to be falling apart. With little choice, he had to go with the flow. Meanwhile, Aizen was upset upon seeing a discharge notice. It had been 2 months since Ashto left, but the other siblings didn't cause a commotion despite talking nonsense. Sherry then entered his office. Aizen became angry as Sherry's plan for a vacation suddenly turned into a discharge. Sherry told her father to calm down. She explained that she made the request without telling him because Aizen would surely refuse. She said the king himself approved the discharge, and now she was a civilian, free from military duties. Seeing Sherry's sudden actions, Aizen wondered if it was related to Ashto. Sherry revealed that kicking out Ashto was the catalyst. She expressed that she had been thinking a lot about Ashto lately and realized she hadn't enjoyed her youth despite being 17. Sherry mentioned she had been training in magic since childhood but now desired to explore more of the world. She decided to embark on a journey, leaving her father speechless. She also planned to take Mayuri with her. Aizen couldn't help but shout in frustration. He reminded Sherry of her position and title, asking her to stop acting selfishly. Sherry then suggested being kicked out of the house too, claiming she didn't care about the Estrella family name. She expressed anger over Ashto being removed from the family without Aizen informing her and Ludger. She questioned if sending their brother into a monster-filled forest was something a parent should do. Sherry asked Aizen if Ashto was just an annoyance to him, emphasizing that Ashto was an important family member to her and Ludger. She couldn't believe their father was solely focused on protecting the family name. Sherry revealed regrets for not paying enough attention to Ashto and cried, expressing her desire to avoid any more regrets. Aizen attempted to calm her down, but Sherry quickly composed herself and declared that the brilliant daughter of the Estrella family was no more because she was leaving. She also suggested to her father to kick her out of the family. Aizen's loud scream echoed in the mansion. Shortly after, Sherry met up with Mayuri and apologized for being late. Mayuri was fine with it, excited to embark on an adventure with Sherry. Sherry reminded her that things wouldn't be easy for them. Mayuri just wanted to see Ashto again since she missed him. Sherry smiled and wondered where her brother was, as Oberstein is vast and undeveloped. Sherry warned Mayuri about monsters in the area. She apologized for taking too long to settle on a date to leave since her proposal took a while to get approved. However, Mayuri was fine with it since she also needed time to prepare to leave her family for good. Sherry was surprised that Mayuri also left her family. Mayuri claimed it was all thanks to Sherry and Ludger. Sherry expected that she would get kicked out soon too. Mayuri shared that Ludger came to her to apologize for getting dragged into Aizen's whims. He was bowing so hard on the floor that his forehead was bleeding. Luckily, Luna Maria was there to stop him. The two hoped the ones left behind would get closer, as Ludger and Luna Maria suited each other in the first place. Mayuri wished for their happiness. Sherry smiled and claimed Mayuri would also find hers. Mayuri wished for Sherry's too, and the genius magician became flustered. Mayuri then grabbed Sherry's hand and reminded her to find Ashto. Sherry agreed to find the idiot who thought his love life was over. Shortly after, Ashto completed the task of making the grapes grow in the vineyard. Elmina approached him and informed him about some visitors' dark-skinned people with horns. Ashto wondered if they might be ogres. The man inquired if Ashto was the chief and if he had any medicine to share. Ashto, curious about their situation, asked for symptoms, which seemed to fluster the man. Reassuring them, Ashto mentioned he was a licensed herbologist. The couple exchanged glances and revealed their daughter's arm, affected by poison from laurel leaves. Ashto assured them it wasn't life-threatening and offered to get some ointment. After examining the arm, Ashto could identify the laurel leaf poison and assured them it wasn't a severe condition. He went to fetch some ointment for treatment. Grateful, the man offered to pay for Ashto's services, but he declined, stating that the herbs were readily available in the area, and he wanted to focus on the treatment, including peeling off the affected skin, which unnerved the daughter. Ashto used to wonder about the family's origins because he wanted the daughter to stay, allowing him to keep an eye on her recovery. The man, looking sad, mentioned they didn't have a home. He explained that they used to live in an ogre village until they were recently exiled by the new chief. Ashto was curious about the reason for their exile. The man revealed that they were demon ogres, a persecuted race among ogres known as the legendary demons' avatars. According to him, one demon ogre's strength equaled that of 100 normal ogres. Ashto was surprised by this revelation but quickly adapted to the idea. Despite their legendary status, the family appeared well-mannered and caring, quite different from what the legends portrayed. Ashto suggested they stay at his place because they had extra houses. The man remembered rumors about their unique race and worried about scaring others. Ashto reassured him, mentioning they already had High Elves and Elder Dwarves in the area. The man was surprised to learn that Elmina, who escorted them, was a High Elf. Ashto confirmed that the ones building houses outside were High Dwarves. The ogre assumed Ashto was something legendary, but Ashto admitted he was just a regular human, breaking the tension. The couple found Ashto's village amazing for housing legendary races, but in Ashto's eyes, the demon ogre family was even more legendary. So the demon ogre family had moved into one of the houses that August had built. The family consisted of Balgildo, Armo, Norma, and Shinha. During a hunt, Elmina was shocked to learn that Balgildo and Armo were siblings. Oh, siblings marrying? Sweet home, Alabama. Balgildo explained that it was normal for them to marry within the family because their race valued strength above all. According to him, children born within their blood would grow into strong, sturdy adults. Jigachad casually explained this while hunting a huge snake monster. Balgildo and Elmina managed to defeat the snake monster and brought it back home. August and Ashto wondered how long the meat from the huge snake would last for them. Balgildo was confused because it was normal for their race to hunt such monstrosities. Ashto couldn't say anything, and August announced the start of a feast. Since then, Balgildo always hunted and provided spoils every day. They had so much food that they had to build a storage room. Ashto was glad that the ogre demon family came, and the settlement was able to eat meat, not just vegetables. Just when Ashto felt happy that their lives were getting better, Elmina came over and exclaimed that the grapes he grew were a hit in their village, and some grape farmers would come over. She wanted to build more vineyards to grow different kinds of grapes. However, Ashto was unimpressed since he would be forced to use his magic again to grow the grape plants. He claimed he was happy seeing how the plants grew well and fast but didn't want to use his magic to disrupt the natural order. Elmina whined as their plan was already in motion, but Ashto only wanted to help for the bare minimum. Elmina reminded Ashto that he used to be the lord of the land and should make an effort for the residents. Ashto then realized something. Did the races living in the land know that his family owned the territory? Elmina mentioned that at least their High Elves village recognized the presence of a human kingdom nearby. However, she pointed out that the forest originally didn't belong to anyone, and Ashto was the first one to settle in. In her eyes, the land belonged to Ashto and they needed his permission for everything they did on the land. In the end, Elmina still asked for permission to build more vineyards. Ashto gave in and agreed but promised to use the growth spell at the bare minimum. Elmina was happy and relied on Ashto to grow the plants while they built the brewery. She also reminded him that about 10 grape farmers were coming and then left for work. Ashto had been surprised when he suddenly heard about new people arriving. He could only sigh at the news. Shella mentioned how lively Elmina had been, praising her for being a good girl. Ashto agreed and fell silent, only to realize that Shella had entered without him noticing. Shella expressed her liking for Ashto's declaration not to use magic that goes against the natural order. She was pleased that he cared about nature. Curious about the blessing, Ashto asked Shella, but she playfully requested him to drop the formality first. After some teasing, Ashto agreed. Shella assured him not to worry about the blessing she gave him, explaining that they were mentally connected and his magic was being channeled to her. She clarified that his magic wouldn't harm the land or plants, but it was a pleasurable experience for her. Shella, having been pent up for a while, expressed relief that her tension was being released with Ashto's help. She continued to tease him until he backed off, claiming it was all in good fun. Before leaving, Shella encouraged Ashto to use her magic however he wished, and wished him luck. Ashto was left flustered and overwhelmed by the dragon mommy. Shortly after, Ashto attended to Norma's injured arm. Norma expressed her gratitude, hugging Ashto, while Armo thanked him for helping her daughter. Elmina approached and informed Ashto that Mej and Lunare had just returned from the High Elves village, but she mentioned they encountered some problems, leaving Ashto perplexed. Outdoors, Mej greeted Ashto and eagerly shared her excitement about the saplings she had brought back, and her anticipation of enjoying fine wine. However, Ashto seemed preoccupied and was ominously approaching Mej. Although he heard about recruiting more High Elves, he couldn't fathom who the beastfolk in maid outfits were. A representative approached Ashto, claiming that Mej had informed them he would be their new master. 50 beastfolk from the Silver Cat clan were set to work in Ashto's settlement, serving him as their lord. Ashto found himself in a state of confusion, and all the Silver Cats bowed before him. Mej had explained that the people from the Silver Cat clan belong to a rare race that becomes 100 times stronger than a normal feline clan when they have a human to serve. Without a master, they could only use a fraction of their powers, making them weaker than even the feeblest feline clan. If their master died, they would become mentally exhausted, making them vulnerable to other beastfolk and monsters. The 50 girls had lost their previous master to a disease and were expelled from their home. Mej encountered them on her way back, visibly tired from being pursued by monsters. Ashto comprehended Mej's explanation while she knelt. Mej asserted that the Silver Cat girls would be valuable since they belonged to a resourceful race. She could simply apologize for the misunderstanding. Ashto had glanced at the Silver Cat girls and observed their worn-out appearance. Noticing they had a child with them, he felt sympathy and decided to help. Approaching the representative, he asked for guidance. The representative advised him to announce that he would be their new master. Although Ashto was a bit annoyed that his peaceful days were disrupted, he still went ahead and declared himself as the Silver Cat girls' new master. Lights surrounded the girls as the representative informed Ashto that the contract had been completed. Ashto expressed gratitude and inquired about giving them orders. Uncertain if it was necessary, Ashto hesitated, but the representative assured him that it would bring them joy to serve their master. Even though it was okay not to issue commands, the contract bound them to fulfill any request from their master. Understanding the terms, Ashto instructed the girls to clean themselves, eat well, and rest. He then assigned Elmina to assist the girls. Given the thriving vineyard, Ashto urged Medj to work even harder. The day continued with elves helping beastfolk with hygiene, and Balgildo arrived with some meat. The Silver Cat girls appeared rejuvenated after cleaning up and having a good meal. 3 days earlier, Ashto had been surprised to see a lot of houses already built. August had praised the Silver Cat girls for completing all the tasks, along with the crafting skills of the Elder Dwarves. Ashto's settlement now had 10 Elder Dwarves, 18 High Elves, 4 Ogre Demons, and 50 Silver Cats. With this number, the settlement had suddenly transformed into a real village, but there was more to come. August informed him that 14 more friends were on their way. Despite the additional help, Ashto felt stressed because there was still work to be done on the winery, more farm fields, and the smithy. August reassured him that the Silver Cat's presence had sped things up. Ashto agreed that progress had been faster since the workload was divided, but he sensed that the Elder Dwarves were considering making the place their permanent home. At that moment, a woman named Aishra approached Ashto, claiming to come from a family of grape growers. Ashto assumed she was someone intellectual due to her appearance. Suddenly, Aishra asked Ashto to expand the vineyard area by about 20 times, revealing a more assertive side to her nature. As the village grew, Ashto's life changed too. Mua, the youngest Silver Cat, used to wake him up every day. Silmeria, the leader of the Silver Cats, was always the one to greet him outside his room. Both Silmeria and Mua lived in his house to help with work. Ashto initially refused, but seeing the Silver Cat sad, he eventually agreed. All 50 of them actually wanted to personally care for him, but Silmeria became their representative. Because Mua was so attached to Silmeria, she ended up living under the same roof as well. Ashto had sat down to have breakfast and asked the girls to join him. Silmeria, considering themselves as mere servants, declined the offer. Ashto insisted, mentioning that eating together would be quicker and it would be more efficient to wash dishes afterward. When Mua's stomach growled, Ashto used it as another reason for them to eat together. Silmeria sighed but eventually sat down quietly. Ashto informed them that this would be the new routine from that day onward. While watching Mua eat, Ashto reminisced about his neighbor's cat that Miyuti used to take care of. He thought that Miyuti might also like Mua if she was around. However, he had already given up on the idea of meeting her again. Meanwhile, Sherry and Miyuti, who were traveling away from home, were hopeful to encounter Ashto once more. Several days later, while Ashto was engrossed in reading herbology books, Mua entered to serve some tea. Ashto thanked her and glanced outside. He observed that the grape harvest was thriving. He remembered how the High Elves had expressed a desire for a large farm, which made him concerned about their ability to manage it. A few days prior, the grape seedlings were swiftly prepared, and Aishra urged Ashto to put his full effort into helping them grow. Strangely, not only the High Elves but also other races seemed excited to watch him, as if they were celebrating. Seahall suddenly appeared and noticed the festive atmosphere. Ashto mentioned his plan to use a growth spell. Shella chuckled and hinted that Ashto had become the village's hope. She explained that wines were cherished by Elder Dwarves and High Elves as the essence of life, and now Ashto could easily produce them. Even the demon ogres would appreciate it, along with the Silver Cats who would become more loyal after witnessing Ashto's divine power. Among them, Shella was the one who looked forward the most because she finally got to have fun after sleeping for a long time. Ashto just laughed and wondered what would happen to him. Shella said Ashto would live the most splendid, happy days of his life. She told him to hold everyone's hope close to his heart. After leaving him alone, Ashto couldn't help but agree to her words. He was someone who had disappointed his parents, suffered from the loss of his love, but in the end some people placed their hopes on him, and every day became enjoyable for him. However, he realized his current situation was unique. Despite that, he continued to do what he needed to do. Ashto used the growth spell, and everyone got excited watching him and the plants grow. Ashto wished for his childhood sweetheart's happiness and swore to live his life in his territory. Shortly after, Ashto finally found some time to resume his herbology studies. Wondering if reading could be enjoyable, Mua, a child, was suggested by Ashto to give it a try. However, Mua, being a kid, preferred playing outdoors. It was at that moment Ashto noticed that the tea they had was more like warm water. Regretting not paying attention to drinks other than wine, he could already imagine Shella requesting green tea. With some books about tea trees and his search magic to find them, Ashto invited Mua for a stroll in the nearby woods. Later on, Ashto realized that the woods were completely isolated from human activity. As he scanned the surroundings, he discovered Mua hanging on a tree branch engaged in playful antics. Concerned, Ashto urged her to come down. Mua casually let go, causing Ashto even more worry. However, to Ashto's relief, Mua skillfully spun and landed on her feet without any trouble. Once again, Ashto acknowledged the athletic abilities of the silver cats. He advised Mua to avoid attempting such risky stunts. At that moment, Ashto noticed Wood and wondered what might be bothering him. Wood was casually munching on some leaves, surprising Ashto, who believed Wood only absorbed nutrients through his roots. Ashto then saw the bushy leaves behind Wood and realized they were tea leaves. Mua and Wood cheered for him. Ashto decided to bring the whole plant back. He softened the ground with magic and lifted it up. The kids were amazed, and Ashto just chuckled. He covered the soil housing the plant with cloth and managed to carry it on his back. Wood offered help, but Ashto declined, later regretting not asking Balgildo to join him. They arrived at the greenhouse, and Ashto was exhausted. The kids praised him once again, calling him amazing. Ashto couldn't believe he had exerted so much effort for a plant. Mua then asked where to plant it. Ashto told her to plant it next to the vineyard, and Mua casually picked up the heavy plant, walking away with Wood following her. Ashto couldn't help but sigh. In a checkpoint, two hooded figures managed to pass through. It turned out to be Sherry and Mayuri. Sherry complained about how huge Oberstein was and how there were checkpoints everywhere. However, they were now at the starting line, about to meet Ashto. Sherry was confident that her brother would be fine, and the two entered the thick forest. Oberstein used to be a known underdeveloped area, and no one knew what was there because of the dangerous monsters. It didn't take long for Sherry and Mayuri to encounter a monster, a huge snake. Sherry tried to protect Mayuri and ended up getting hit by the snake's tail. She groaned in pain, unable to believe that the area was more perilous than expected. Sherry urged Mayuri to run away, but Mayuri was too scared to move. The snake then targeted her, but Sherry once again blocked its attack. While telling Mayuri to pull herself together, Sherry started to wobble. Mayuri became confused and wondered what was wrong. It was then that she realized Sherry had been poisoned, as the snake crept up behind her for another attack. Mayuri and Sherry were saved when the snake was cut in half. Mayuri glanced back and saw the demon ogre family. Balgildo seemed puzzled to encounter humans, and Shinha noticed one of them was injured. Mayuri recognized their ogre-like features, though they appeared larger than she had heard. Balgildo then inquired if the snake had poisoned Sherry and asked if Mayuri could neutralize it. When Mayuri shook her head, Balgildo suggested they go to their village because their chief was a skilled herbologist. He then asked Armo and Norma to carry Mayuri and Sherry since they were women. Shinha was told to carry the snake's head. Armo reassured Mayuri, saying they would be fine, and Norma easily carried Sherry. Everyone hurried back to the village, and Mayuri was surprised to find a village with elves, dwarves, and silver cats. Armo led them to the chief's house, and Norma assured them that Sherry would be okay. Mayuri pictured the village chief as an elderly elf or beast folk. Little did she know it was actually her sweetheart. Norma burst into the house, saying someone had been hurt. Silmeria scolded her for not knocking, and Norma said sorry, then went to find their chief. Silmeria said the chief was in the greenhouse and wondered who was hurt. Armo came in carrying Sherry, and Silmeria told them to take her to the examination room. Norma went to get the chief. In another room, Sherry sweated and groaned from pain, making Mayuri worried. She told Silmeria that Sherry was poisoned by a snake. Silmeria said they might need the snake to make medicine. Norma said she'd ask her husband to bring back the snake's remains. At that moment, Norma came back with their leader, who was advising her not to pull him so hard. Mayuri easily recognized the familiar voice. She checked the entrance, and the two friends finally reunited. Announcement: the ship kept sailing. On board, everyone. Surprised, Ashto wondered why Mayuri was in his village, but quickly noticed the unconscious Sherry lying on the bed. Mayuri confirmed they had been attacked by a poisonous snake. Silmeria mentioned that Armo would return with the snake's remains, and Ashto asked Silmeria to get some hot water ready. Ashto had numerous questions in his mind, but he knew he had to prioritize saving his sister first. With Silmeria's help, Ashto took care of Sherry gently. After some treatment, he assured Sherry would recover soon. Ashto then asked Silmeria to prepare a room for Mayuri, and the maid left them. Ashto and Mayuri sat quietly for a moment until they realized time had passed. Awkward silence filled the room again. Ashto then inquired why they had come to Oberstein, and Mayuri said it was obviously to find him. Ashto was surprised and recalled something about Mayuri. Mayuri explained that she wouldn't marry Ludger, and both Sherry and Ludger helped to end the engagement since Ludger was also against it from the beginning. She mentioned Luna, Ludger, and Sherry's support in reaching Oberstein. Ashto asked if it truly was to find him, and Mayuri confirmed, but suddenly seemed disappointed for being late. She hadn't expected to find Ashto living with a beautiful woman like Silmeria. Feeling there was no longer a place for her to enter Ashto's life, Ashto became flustered and clarified that Silmeria was his housekeeper. Mayuri questioned if he was telling the truth, and Ashto affirmed that he didn't have a lover. The two fell silent again and kept exchanging smiles and glances. Mayuri then wondered about Ashto's life in Oberstein, and he mentioned it would be a long story. Mayuri expressed interest in hearing it, as she had much to share with him too. Shortly after, Mayuri had dozed off on a couch, and Ashto grinned while watching her sleep. Sherry woke up and Ashto advised her to be careful not to move too much. Sherry questioned if she was really seeing Ashto, to which he confirmed that he was indeed her big brother. Overwhelmed, Sherry burst into tears and embraced Ashto. He reassured her that Mayuri was also okay and offered her some tea, taking a moment to explain their current location. Sherry was taken aback to learn that Ashto had become the chief of the place. Ashto inquired about their plans, and Sherry excitedly shared that they intended to live with him since she had been estranged from the family. Ashto pondered if Mayuri was comfortable with the idea, and Mayuri agreed, expressing a desire to be together forever. This confession left Ashto flustered. At that moment, Mua approached, bringing tea, and Sherry was pleasantly surprised by the adorable silver cat. Ashto then informed them that Mua was in training to be a housekeeper. The two girls introduced themselves, and Sherry, taken by Mua's cuteness, asked her to come closer. She hugged Mua tightly and even requested a follow-up from her brother. Sherry continued to pet Mua until she realized it was time to serve the tea. However, due to her training, Mua's tea-serving skills were a bit chaotic. Ashto expressed gratitude, and Silmeria came over to check on them. Ashto introduced Sherry and Mayuri to Silmeria, expressing hope that they would get along. Silmeria then introduced herself and offered to show Mayuri to her. Sherry had been curious about her brother's activities. Ashton explained that he had been documenting all the patients he had treated, and had just finished noting down Sherry's medical records. He smiled and mentioned how Sherry had gained some weight. Sherry wondered if he was implying she was getting fat. Ashton reassured her, saying that Sherry and Ledger behaved differently at the manor, and it had been a while since Sherry affectionately called him brother. Since Sherry became a commander and a superstar like Ledger, she had little time to spend at home. Ashton could only recall exchanging greetings with her when he increased his affinity. He was genuinely surprised when Sherry visited and claimed to be living with him. Sherry then said loudly that Ashto was to blame too. She admitted that both she and Ledger were too caught up with work, but they were genuinely concerned about Ashto. Ashto was surprised because there had always been a distance between them, and they never showed any dislike or hostility. He remembered dedicating himself to his studies to gain recognition from the family after discovering his affinity. Ashto was that he was the one creating distance between himself and his siblings. Sherry wondered if Ashto had just realized it. Ashto couldn't help but apologize, and Sherry called him an idiot for still not understanding despite leaving home. They ended up giving each other a tight hug, leaving Sia and Mayuri feeling relieved. 3 days later, Sherry had fully recovered and looked well. Their stomachs were fine too. Ashto asked if Sherry felt anything strange, but she insisted that she was fine. She didn't want to stay in bed forever and expressed a desire to explore the village. She mentioned that she also wanted to thank the ogre family. Later in the ogre family's home, everyone was dismantling a cow, and even the youngest, Shinha, casually cracked the cow's horn with his bare hands. Armo recognized Mayuri and Sherry. Mayuri thanked the family for saving them the other day. Balgildo was glad they were fine. Mayuri thanked him again, but Balgildo turned around without saying anything. Armo apologized, claiming that Balgildo was just shy. Ashto couldn't believe seeing the village's strongest person was blushing. Afterwards, Ashto guided Mayuri and Sherry around. Sherry was surprised to see a vast farm, but Ashto was even more surprised to witness the place expanding. They later encountered Elmina, and Ashto paid to introduce her to them. Elmina felt doubtful, noticing that Sherry and Ashto didn't seem like siblings. Ashto quickly exclaimed that his cute little sister resembled him. Feeling embarrassed, Sherry intervened, stopping the two from arguing further. Sherry then formally introduced herself and Mayuri. Elmina reciprocated, expressing how great it was that the two were joining the village. Mayuri was amazed by Elmina's beauty, but Ashto insisted it was only noticeable when Elmina smiled. Ashto had gone to find August, but the other dwarves informed him that August was out gathering materials. Ashto decided he would introduce the girls to August next time. Sherry was amazed to see legendary races residing in Oberstein. Ashto asked once again if the two really wanted to live in his village. Sherry proudly exclaimed that her ice magic could be helpful, and Mayuri claimed she could make desserts for the village. Ashto was pleased to hear those words and formally welcomed them to his village. Sherry was happy and suggested that Ashto let Mayuri stay in his room. Shortly after, Mayuri strolled down the streets clutching a basket. She bumped into Sherry and the rest, sharing some snacks. She joined them upon learning about the storage expansion, remembering Sherry's request for her ice magic. After the encounter, Mayuri wore a wistful smile. A month had passed since she settled in the village. Mayuri pondered how she could repay the kindness of those who assisted her. Her magical abilities didn't match up to Sherry's, and lacking proper equipment, she couldn't whip up elaborate snacks. At that moment, Mua approached with a cup of tea. Like always, Mua was a bit messy when making tea, but the end result was consistently good. Mayuri expressed gratitude for the tea, though Mua felt down about her slow tea-making skills. Mayuri reassured her, saying she would improve over time. Suddenly, Mua pondered about Mayuri's significance to her master. She remembered how Ashto was anxious before Mayuri and Sherry arrived in the village. Ashto became visibly happy when it was decided that everyone would live together. Mayuri confirmed that Ashto meant a lot to her, and she knew Ashto cared deeply for Sherry and herself. Mua then declared that Mayuri was also important to her, as anyone significant to Ashto held the same importance for her. Mayuri smiled and thanked Mua for the sentiment. Did you think Ashto had a tough time? Mayuri, the second daughter of the Atwhite family, faced similar challenges. She often got compared to her talented and brilliant sister, Luna Maria. People saw her as less competent, much like the second son of the Estrella family. People even remembered how the eldest son of the Estrella family and Luna Maria got along well, thinking that talented kids should be friends. When Mayuri learned about the struggles of the Estrella family's second son, she felt that he had it even harder than her. The two families were close because they shared similar backgrounds. At a party, Luna Maria used to be the center of attention. Mayuri used to sit alone on a bench, hoping the party would end soon. Suddenly he spotted a boy standing nearby. They looked at each other until they realized they were both the second children in their families. This marked the beginning of their friendship. They used to get along well and always hung out together. They used to sneak out with Sherry to play games in the city or go on adventures to the mountains. They led normal lives as children until they turned 15 and discovered their special abilities. Ashto, upon realizing his connection with nature, became deeply absorbed in his studies, rarely leaving the house. Mayuri, on the other hand, found herself with an affinity for explosion magic, a crucial skill in the mage army. Suddenly, her entire family's perception of her changed. They pressured her to excel in magic, wanting her to surpass someone named Sherry, who was already considered powerful. Despite her family's expectations, Mayuri struggled because her magic was designed for harm and destruction. Her family was disappointed that she could only perform simple spells, considering her innate talent. In an effort to make her more valuable, they planned to marry her off to Ledger. Mayuri then woke up from her flashback, realizing she had dreamt of her challenging past. Observing the clear sky without any obstructing buildings, she came to a realization. Leaving Mua, who had just woken up, she hurried away. That night, everyone gathered in an open space. Elmina was curious about what was happening, and Ashto said Mayuri had asked everyone to come outside to see something special. Mayuri appeared and expressed gratitude for their presence, mentioning that it had been a month since she arrived. She wanted to give something back, even though she considered herself not very capable. Mayuri then waved her wand and instructed them to enjoy the view. She shot something up into the sky, and everyone watched as a single magic spell drew a line until it vanished. Moments later, fireworks illuminated the night sky, leaving everyone impressed and amazed. People of all races were delighted to witness something beautiful, resembling flowers blooming in the night sky. Ashto recognized it as Mayuri's spell called Brilliant Fire, an original creation since she couldn't learn offensive magic. Led by August, everyone went to get some drinks to enjoy while marveling at the display. Mayuri asked Ashto about her magic, and he complimented it as beautiful. Bro, why not just call Mayuri beautiful, not just her magic? Another day comes and we see some chicken like Ashto, the chicken who doesn't say his feelings directly. Mayuri visited the barn to collect milk and eggs, expressing gratitude to the elves. In return, the elves were thankful too, enjoying the delicious snacks Mayuri shared. Even Shinha and Norma began requesting different kinds of treats. It had been 2 months since Mayuri and Sherry arrived. Sherry used her ice magic on every home's refrigerator, allowing everyone to store frozen food. The cool drinks she created became a favorite for everyone. Meanwhile, Mayuri consistently baked goods and shared them with all. With Silmeria and Mua, Ashto's house became more vibrant with the addition of Sherry and Mayuri. Initially feeling the house was too big, Ashto now thought it was just perfect. Every day used to be filled with happy smiles, but there was something bothering Ashto. One night he headed to the basement, pondering whether whiskey would pair well with wine. Complaining that everyone drank too much, Ashto caught the attention of Silmeria, who wondered what was bothering him. Ashto explained he was thinking of conducting an experiment. Ashto pointed out the shortage of alcohol for everyone, and Silmeria agreed, having heard the same from the dwarves and elves. The village's homemade alcohol wasn't ready yet, prompting Ashto to contemplate using his growth magic to expedite the maturation process. He decided to start with his personal barrels, and Silmeria supported his idea. She questioned Ashto about his discreet behavior, and he replied that he didn't want to attract a crowd and wasn't sure if it would even work. Silmeria observed Ashto as he waved his wand and cast the growth spell on one of the barrels. The basement filled with light, and the barrel began to shake. The shaking intensified, and Ashto realized that the wood of the barrel was also growing. After stopping it, they assumed the wine had matured for about 10 years. Silmeria came over with a wine glass. Ashto then opened the barrel's cork, and a sweet, tangy smell covered the area. Ashto and Silmeria were flustered, and they could see that the quality was better than any wine they had before. Ashto then drank the wine, and his eyes widened. He couldn't really describe it in words, but it was good. Silmeria then tried it, and her whole body jolted. Ashto concluded that the experiment was successful. After that, Ashto decided to use the growth spell on all wine stored in the whole village. Elmina was impressed and claimed that she should hurry up with her plans. Ashto wondered what plans, but Elmina kept it as a secret from him. Looks like the dwarves were also getting excited. Several days later, the village had new visitors called the demon hounds. Ashto came over to introduce himself along with Balgildo and Sherry as his bodyguards. Sherry claimed the hound dogs should have been extinct a long time ago, and Balgildo confirmed that he hasn't seen them before. The demon hound's representative had approached Ashto and requested shelter for his group upon hearing rumors about Ashto's village being a home to various races. He went on to explain that their village had been struck by a plague, leaving only a few survivors who started wandering. Ashto inquired why they believed his village welcomed rare species. The demon hound clarified that there was a rumor about a human gathering rare creatures to build a village and develop the land, and Sherry thought it matched Ashto's village description. Sherry then asked Ashto to allow the demon hounds to take refuge in the village. Ashto agreed, emphasizing that they should share responsibilities like everyone else. The demon hound proudly mentioned that the men excelled in hunting, while the women were skilled at sewing. After Ashto heard the news, he decided to appoint Balgildo to lead the men, and Sherry to take care of the women. While considering asking the dwarves to build more houses, Ashto spotted a child among the Daon hounds. It turned out to be Liara, who someone claimed was unique. Typically, Daon hounds give birth to 3 kids, but Liara was a rare case, born alone. Sadly, her parents had succumbed to the plague. Mua then noticed that Liara had an injured foot and suggested that Ashto could heal her immediately. Ashto requested the Daon hounds to entrust Liara to their care while they were given a tour of the village. In the treatment room, Ashto noticed that Lara had symptoms similar to Norma's before, but Lara's condition was much worse. Ashto advised her to rest for a few days to recover. Lara seemed anxious, but Ashto assured her that she would heal. Ashto then asked Muti to keep an eye on Lara while he would ask permission from the demon hounds to let her stay for a few days. Muti silently watched over the frightened Lara. Suddenly, Mua approached Lara and asked about the origin of the demon hounds. Madi tried to intervene, but Mua persisted in talking to Lara. Mua shared that she and her mother, who were from outside the forest, had a tough life after their previous master died. However, everything changed for the better when they met Ashto. Mua described how everyone in their group was always smiling and having fun every day. She assured Lara that she would soon experience the same joy. Lara expressed her concern about not having siblings to talk to. Unlike everyone else, Mua suggested that Lara talk to her instead, promising to play with her once she got better. Muti smiled, observing the budding friendship between the two girls. Shortly after, cotton had become a prevalent material in the village for the demon hound women to use in fabric workshops. They crafted clothes for the residents, while the demon hound men, including Balgildo, participated in hunts. The village, originally centered around a massive tree, started expanding. Ashto was astonished to encounter sheep nearly the size of a house. A demon hound explained that these were king sheep, known for producing the best wool. Ashto was pleased to see them, though Balgildo claimed to have brought them back in response to Ashto's request for wool. However, Ashto had not anticipated such monstrous creatures. Balgildo reassured him that the king sheep were trained. Eventually, Ashto approached the elder dwarves and requested the creation of a large ranch to house the king sheep. In the greenhouse, Ashto examined the plants he grew and sensed something missing. He thought about it until he noticed Shella behind him. Shella, seeing Ashto troubled, offered to show him some interesting plants. Though Ashto feared the worst, Shella assured him not to worry and presented 3 types of saplings. She recommended growing them in the greenhouse, assuring Ashto that he'd like them. Before he could ask how to grow them, the mommy dragon disappeared from sight. A few days later, Ashto planted the tall sapling in a separate soil bed, and the 2 smaller ones in a pot. The appearances of the 2 smaller plants seemed eerie to him. The tall one looked normal, but the leaves were unfamiliar. Worried that his growth spell might turn it into something strange, Ashto hesitated. Eventually, curiosity won over fear, and he decided to grow the sapling cautiously. It transformed into a tree with pink flowers, emitting a pleasant fragrance. Ashto enjoyed watching the flowers bloom, and excitedly continued using his magic. Eventually, he realized the plant had fully grown, bearing fruit. As Ashto wondered if the fruits were like peaches, Shella appeared, acting surprised that the sapling was already fully grown. Ashto asked about the tree, and Shella said it was a celestial peach tree. Ashto had some knowledge about it, and Shella confirmed it was the legendary fruit created by mages long ago. Shella got the sapling a long time back when mages were called celestials. She mentioned that the fruits could be turned into delicious wine by soaking them in water overnight. Shella assured Ashto that the fruits were edible as they were, and suggested harvesting them. Ashto then picked some fruits and immediately soaked some in a jar of water. Shella got excited for the next day and suggested they eat the fruits. She told Ashto to cut them like normal fruits and prepare a serving. Shella fed Ashto, but he insisted that Shella should try them first since the sapling came from her. Shella insisted it was Ashto who grew it and practically forced a sliced fruit into his mouth. She asked for his feedback, and Ashto could feel the juicy, sweet nectar filling his mouth. He said it was really good, and Shella was pleased. Shella then revealed that the tree in the greenhouse was the only one of its kind in the world, shocking Ashto. She also suggested feeding Wood with the celestial peach tree's leaves, claiming that something good would happen. Ashto looked at the jar with water and peaches again, imagining everyone happily sipping cups of it. The following day the jars were opened and everyone eagerly looked on. Elmina and August questioned whether the liquid inside was truly wine made from the new peach tree. Ashto took a sip, and his expression said it all. It tasted fantastic. Elmina and August eagerly vied for the next taste. Ashto, pleased with the flavor, shared it with everyone. The women found it easy to enjoy because of its sweetness, but they had to be cautious not to get intoxicated. The representative of the demon hounds then pondered if they could also consume the fruits. Ashto reassured him, encouraging them to harvest and share with their kind. This prompted requests from representatives of High Elves, Elder Dwarves, and Demon Ogres for some fruits as well. In the end, Ashto decided to harvest all of them. Later, Ashto sighed as the fruits were depleted. Wood asked if Ashto desired more celestial peaches. Ashto suggested caution next time as they only had one tree. In response, Wood walked to the field and started doing something. To Ashto's surprise, saplings began sprouting, all celestial peach trees, as Wood found their leaves tasty. Ashto marveled at the tree men's unexpected power. Shella entered and was surprised to find that Wood had duplicated numerous celestial peach trees. She felt proud seeing Wood's growth, and Ashto wondered if it was all because of the magic he borrowed from Shella. Shella giggled, realizing that Ashto was giving away all the fruit. Ashto argued that there was no point in keeping them for himself. Curious about Shella's visit, Ashto asked, and she mentioned checking on the other saplings. Ashto had forgotten about the other two and wondered what they were, but Shella couldn't recall. She assured him they were not poisonous and suggested using his magic to find out. Ashto decided to use his growth magic on the two saplings. They glowed for a while, but nothing happened. Shella smiled, watching Ashto getting flustered. Despite trying again with more magic power and determination, nothing happened for the second time. Ashto questioned if he was not powerful enough, but Shella reassured him. She asked him to look and claimed the plants were growing. Confused, Ashto saw the pots moving even though he had stopped his magic spell. The saplings outgrew and popped out of the pots. Two girls with leaves on their heads appeared, leaving Ashto bewildered. Meanwhile, Miyuti baked a celestial peach pie and Sherry praised both Miyuti and Silmeria. Miyuti mentioned it was a sudden idea and Silmeria thought it would be popular with both kids and adults. Lyra and Mua returned home and noticed a delicious smell. Miyuti then told them to wash their hands before eating. Miyuti was happy that they had different ingredients that could be used for various snacks and desserts. Once the kids finished washing their hands and started eating, everyone heard Ashto coming back home. Sherry and Miyuti went to greet him but soon wore surprised expressions. They wondered who the kids clinging to him were. The two kids greeted back with cute smiles. Ashto, just as confused as they were, couldn't say anything yet. A few hours ago, Ashto stared at the plant girls and wondered about them. Shella giggled when she saw his curiosity was piqued. She introduced them as Mandrake and Alraun, considered legendary herbs. Ashto had his doubts about Shella's words, but when he noticed leaves growing from the girls' heads, he began to sense something was off. Suddenly, he realized what they were, and Shella confirmed his suspicions. The leaves on their heads were used to make the legendary remedy, Elixir. Elixirs were known as a cure-all and were created by Genius, one of the legendary dragons known for its wisdom. Currently, only 2 elixirs existed, one in the treasure chambers of Big Baylog Kingdom, and the other in the Kingdom of Dragon Road. The recipe for it was a mystery, and 2 of its ingredients were found growing on the heads of these little girls. Suddenly, Mandrake and Alraun embraced Ashto. Surprised, Ashto turned to Sheila for assistance. Sheila explained that the girls considered him their father because he shared his magic power with them, similar to how trees share wood. Though uneasy with the fatherly title, Ashto was brushed off by Sheila, who continued to explain that the 2 girls could survive on sunlight and water but also ate like regular people. She even suggested feeding them celestial peaches and swiftly departed, leaving Papa Ashto with his newfound kids. Fast forward to the present, Ashto shared the events with the others. Sherry found it hard to believe her brother was now a dad. Trying to shift the conversation, Ashto complimented Miyuti's delicious pie. Sherry then inquired about where the 2 girls would live. Despite Ashto rejecting the idea of being their father, Miyuti insisted that the girls needed rooms. Ashto agreed but faced the challenge of limited space in the examination room and full rooms elsewhere. He also noticed that the children's rooms were already crowded. Lyra, claiming to be fully healed, stood up and declared she could leave the house. Flustered, Ashto pleaded with her not to think about leaving, saddened at the thought of an only child like Lyra returning to the demon hounds. As he thought about asking August to add extensions, Miyuti suggested letting the 2 girls go to her room instead. Miyuti was trying to act like the mother of Ashto's daughters. As Muti invited them, Sherry also wanted to have one of them because they were cute, and her room was big enough for her alone. Seeing that the two were happy about it, Ashto thanked his sister and wife. It was then decided that Mandrake would stay with Mayuti while Alraun would be with Sherry. Several weeks later, Ashto noticed more houses in the village and elder dwarves. They even got 3 wine cellars and another building whose purpose he didn't know. He left the buildings to the dwarves and decided not to think about it too much since he had more important things to do. In his herbology room, Ashto used to stare at the mandrake and Alraun leaves. He could harvest 1 leaf a day, but he was surprised at how the little girls just snapped them off from their heads. He had imagined them to look mysterious since they were legendary herbs, but they were only normal looking. As Ashto decided to do some research, Shella appeared again out of thin air. As usual, Ashto was surprised and asked Shella to stop scaring him. However, Shella kept doing it since she found Ashto's reactions cute. She could see that he had already gotten the leaves. Ashto expressed his worries about snapping them off, but Shella told him not to worry too much. She wondered where the two went, and Ashto claimed they were playing with Mua and others. Shella got confused, and Ashto claimed that the two were still kids who should hang out with other kids to play. Shella flinched, and Ashto wondered if it was bad. Shella smiled, glad to leave them in his care. Ashto got confused. Shella then claimed that the village was really brimming with life. Ashto claimed it was thanks to the elder dwarves building houses. Shella then reminded him that the village would continue to grow. As she asked him to work hard, Shella gave Ashto a sweet peck on his cheeks. While Ashto looked all flustered, Shella left again. Ashto had wondered why Shella was visiting in the first place. Suddenly, he spotted a book on his desk and questioned if Shella had forgotten about it. Opening the book, he discovered a basic recipe for making the elixir. But oh boy, the ingredients seemed like an NBA All-Star team lineup. Ashto sighed, thinking it wasn't simple at all, especially since the ingredients were legendary. Reading further, he gave up on understanding the ancient dragon scale mentioned in the list. Then he realized the book had more to offer. Each page was filled with amazing information, containing recipes and ingredients for various remedies. Ashto felt fortunate to receive such a generous gift from Shella. He continued reading and came across even more bizarre recipes like something that could bring back the dead. The sky got darker and Mayuti entered the room to wake up Ashto. She said it was dinner time and Ashto was surprised at how quickly time had passed. Mayuti smiled and reminded Ashto about his habit of getting absorbed in concentration. Ashto groaned, but Mayuti liked that part about him. She was happy that Ashto hadn't changed, and she was grateful to know that she was now always close enough to call for him. As they shared a sweet moment, Sherry's scolding voice echoed through the house, urging them to have dinner. The two quickly went to the dinner area. Shortly after, Ashto discovered the plant kids lounging on the Sheep King's wool, having not found them in the greenhouse. Feeling envious of their cozy spot, he continued his search and noticed that the houses had grown larger. It had been a while since he ventured outside, engrossed in the book left by Shella. Ashto then observed the demon ogre family heading off to work. He greeted them and wondered if they were going hunting. Balgildo confirmed they were checking traps. Ashto belatedly realized Balgildo loomed large beside him. Unlike regular ogres, demon ogres resisted poison and had impenetrable skin against standard blades. Males boasted incredible arm strength, while females possessed powerful leg strength. Due to these abilities, they were known as the Kins of the Demon King, and faced ostracism from others. However, in Ashto's village, the family used to be an important hunting family, and everyone already knew them. Shinha then came out and proudly displayed the axe he had recently inherited from Balgildo. Norma started teasing her brother, but Shinha insisted that Norma was also excited about inheriting Armo's dual knives. The two argued, and Norma suggested that Ashto join their hunt. Armo told his daughter not to bother the mayor. Norma then playfully claimed that mushrooms would grow on Ashto's head since he rarely went outside his house. Ashto felt depressed at the thought of Norma seeing him as a shut-in. Everyone then went out to the forest and Ashto wondered where they were. Balgildo pointed at the trap, but to Ashto's eyes it looked like a massive pitfall that couldn't be called a normal trap. The kids were glad to see something caught and commented on how small it was. Ashto exclaimed that the dead monster was huge enough to swallow a house. He assumed it would take 100 humans to lift the body. Armo then told Shinha to fetch it. Shinha excitedly went down and casually went under the monster. He then pushed it up, making the dead monster fly out of the pitfall. Ashto was left speechless. As Ashto started feeling foolish for getting scared on his own, the demon ogre family began cutting some parts of the dead monster. Ashto got startled when he saw the demon ogres opening the monster's stomach, and he wondered what they were up to. Shinha then explained that they were spreading the blood and smell to attract other monsters for hunting. Ashto then spotted some wolves emerging from the bushes, and Shinha eagerly pulled out his axe. He started hunting the other monsters, and the surprised Ashto could only quietly accept the splattered blood that followed. Balgildo wondered if Ashto was okay. He apologized, mentioning that they didn't intend to frighten their mayor with their method, and he assured Ashto that this type of hunt was normal for them. Ashto had forgotten they were in Oberstein, a place full of monsters where no humans dared to go. Suddenly, Balgildo sensed something and asked who was nearby. Ashto wondered if more monsters were around, but instead a little kid emerged from the bushes. Observing her features, Ashto noticed that the child resembled Balgildo and his family. The kid began to cry, and Ashto, in response, helped her up, discovering a scraped knee. He applied some ointment and reminded her to let it dry. Ashto couldn't help but wonder if she had become separated from her parents and questioned where they might be. As the girl pointed in a direction, a giant person blocked Ashto's view and stared at him. Ashto couldn't say anything and questioned if he was dreaming. The girl then introduced the giant man as her father and explained how she had fallen and Ashto had helped her. The man continued to stare at Ashto and silently nodded. Realizing that the man wasn't a threat, Ashto asked if they were demon ogres. The man confirmed, and Ashto was surprised at how gentle the giant man's voice was. Ashto asked him to wait and consulted Balgildo for confirmation. Balgildo verified that the man was indeed a demon ogre. Ashto wondered why the man looked anxious, and Balgildo admitted he was nervous because he had never met someone of the same race before. He was just uneasy about meeting new people. Since Balgildo couldn't provide much help, Ashto gathered his courage and informed the demon ogre that he had a village nearby. The man questioned if it was acceptable for a demon ogre to live with humans. Ashto assured him that they even had other legendary races in the village. The man took a moment and mentioned he had a family, to which Ashto agreed to welcome them. Ashto had introduced himself and Balgildo's family. The little girl introduced herself along with her huge father named Diamdo. Ashto found it challenging to get used to the immense quietness of Diamdo. Suddenly, two more demon ogres appeared, Diamdo's son Kirinji and his wife Nima. Ashto then instructed them to follow him to their village. On the way to the village, it was awkward and silent. Ashto tried to break the ice by discussing their assistance in carrying the spoils and the village's wine, but Diamdo responded with short answers. He also attempted to engage Kirinji and Shinha in conversation, but only Shinha replied briefly. The awkwardness made Ashto feel disheartened. Diamdo wondered why Shinha called him mayor, and Ashto confirmed that he had become one. Diamdo realized that Ashto was the person in the rumors gathering rare races. Ashto was curious about the origin of the rumor. Diamdo didn't expect Ashto's village to have demon ogres as well. Ashto then inquired about Diamdo's family, and Diamdo quickly affirmed that they were exiled, just like Balgildo's family. Ashto suggested relocating Diamdo's family to his village since they had plenty of spare houses, and Balgildo's family was already there. Diamdo felt a bit nervous as they had never met other demon ogres before. Ashto advised him to speak normally. Ashto felt happy that Isla seemed friendly. He decided to create a chance for the two families to connect. Ashto brought Isla to Norma and introduced them, encouraging Norma to be friends with Isla. Norma admitted feeling nervous, but Ashto reminded her of how she made friends with Mua and Lyra. Isla then introduced herself, and despite feeling a bit awkward, Norma did the same. Later, Ashto shared the situation with Diamdo, emphasizing how even small things could turn into opportunities. He suggested that Diamdo invite Balgildo for a drink, thinking their families could get along. Diamdo agreed with a smile, saying he would give it a try. However, things took an unexpected turn. Instead of a friendly conversation, Ashto witnessed the two demon ogre fathers punching each other as if they were in a boxing match. Several hours before the clash between the two ogre dads, Ashto told Diamdo that Balgildo would attend the ogre clan's friendship ceremony with the newcomers. Diamdo didn't mind at all, and Ashto was glad that the two would get along. It was a ritual to form friendship between the two demon ogre families, but Ashto couldn't believe others were also watching. Elmina then appeared, calling Ashto a shut-in. Ashto denied the nickname, but Elmina reminded him how long he had been cooped up in his house. She mentioned the last time they talked was about the brewery. She then asked what was happening, and Ashto told her about the friendship ritual. Elmina got excited and understood why others wanted to watch since it was a ritual between two demon ogres. Seeing how excited Elmina was, Ashto wondered what kind of ritual it was. The two demon ogre dads then stepped forward and faced each other. Ashto asked what happens during the ritual, and Elmina simply explained that the two fight. Just then, Balgildo and Diamdo punched each other, and the impact was strong. Ashto was shocked by this event. Both the demon ogres took the punches well but still bled. They then stepped away from each other. Balgildo shared that he hadn't bled since he was a child, and Diamdo said the same. The two then grabbed each other's hands and started a strength competition. They screamed loudly like beasts, and Ashto just stood there watching this strange ritual. After some time and some drops of blood, the two demon ogres made peace. Balgildo then invited Diamdo for some beer, and Diamdo agreed. Balgildo's words started a party in the village. Norm and Isla became friends immediately. Nima and Armo also went through their own friendship ritual and became close. Shinha and Kirinji became sworn brothers after Kirinji shared a gruesome story about being eaten by a dragon but escaping after messing up its insides. A few days later, the demon hound told Ashto that a new building had been built. Ashto thought it was the one that had been taking a long time to complete. The demon hound said everyone would celebrate its completion, which was why he hurried to process the recent prey. He exclaimed there had been a lot to handle since Daimdo and his family joined the village. Ashto agreed, as the two demon ogre families always hunted as if they were competing with each other. The demon hound suggested expanding the food storage facilities, and Ashto decided to ask the dwarves later. Ashto then checked out the new building and realized it looked like a noble's manor. Elmina then appeared, and Ashto wondered if it was another brewery. Elmina said the brewery was next to the storage facility, and they were already building a fourth one. August appeared and wondered if Ashto didn't really know anything. Another dwarf asked August to blame Ashto for staying in his room all the time. August proudly claimed that the new building was the dwarves' hard work. He presented it as the village bathhouse. Ashto was surprised and remembered that they used to clean themselves with buckets of hot water. He was amazed because even the royal capital didn't have a huge bathhouse like the one in front of him. August told Ashto that they would start the celebration. He then ordered something to be brought over. There were 3 signs: female bath, male bath, and mayor's bath. Ashto wondered about the third one, and Elmina explained that it was his own private bath. The middle one was his alone. August then asked Ashto to put up the signs as the mayor. Confused, Ashto tried to discuss the mayor's bath first, but everyone kept pushing him to start the celebration. Ashto sighed. He wanted to interact with others more and didn't want to be treated specially. In the end, he hung up the signs, and Elmina announced that the village bathhouse was now officially open for everyone to use. She then told Ashto to enjoy his bath, and Ashto felt disappointed that he was alone. Ashto soon entered the mayor's bath and noticed that it was not designed for just one person as he had expected. He saw that the interiors were grander compared to a noble's manor. After washing himself, Ashto dipped into the bath and let out a huge sigh. His exhaustion melted away, and he realized that he would not return to a life without baths and using towels to wipe himself. It was all thanks to everyone that life in the village had improved, and Ashto decided to thank them later. Ashto felt like he needed to do more mayor-like things after recalling that he had been a shut-in for a while. He exclaimed how good it felt to take a bath, and Shella agreed. Ashto then paused for a moment and exclaimed that Shella should not be in his bath. However, Shella did not listen as she was enjoying the bath. Ashto then tried to get out as he felt embarrassed sharing a bath with a dragon. Shella then asked him not to panic, assuring him she wouldn't do anything mean. She asked for a chat, and Ashto sat back down, facing the other way. She asked if Ashto had already read the book she left. She told him to use it however he wanted. She shared that the book was made from a part of her body and recorded all the wisdom and knowledge stored in her mind. She giggled and called it Murcielago's Grimoire, the book that holds the knowledge of the Emerald Dragon. Ashto then realized why the book had endless pages. He asked if Shella was sure about leaving the book to him, and Shella confirmed that she gave it to Ashto on purpose. She asked him to put it to good use. Ashto thanked her, but Shella had already disappeared like the wind as usual. As always, Ashto was left surprised by Shella's sudden appearance and disappearance. The bathhouse soon became popular in the village. It became a daily habit for everyone to wash themselves after a hard day's work. August shared that the dwarves had a larger bath than the one they just built. He said it used natural hot water from underground. Ashto was surprised, and the dwarves suggested he visit the natural hot spring sometime. Ashto looked forward to that visit. The next day, they quickly expanded their fields. Since everyone loved ale after a bath, Ashto asked Wood to grow more hops and wheat. After some preparations, Ashto used his skill to quickly grow the plants. They even built a new storage room for the ale, which turned out bigger than Ashto expected. With Sherry's ice magic, everyone enjoyed freezing cold ale. Elmina was happy that Ashto was being proactive and cooperative for once. Ashto claimed it was thanks to the bath they made and that it would be bad for him to stay indoors all the time. Elmina doubted his words but left Ashto to take a dip in the bath after drinking ale. Ashto corrected her, saying she should bathe before drinking. The baths were a major hit with the villagers. Soon after, Elmina suggested a cultural exchange with the village of High Elves. She said it was about time, but Ashto was surprised by the sudden idea because he knew Elmina had been kicked out of the village after drinking the village chief's secret stash of alcohol. Elmina said she wanted to apologize by sharing some of their alcohol. She also wanted to use the chance to mingle and trade with them. She had been planning it for some time since Ashto's village produced good alcohol, as well as utensils and furniture made by the dwarves. She suggested using those things to trade with other villages and races in the forest. She said the High Elves village would be their first step. Since the alcohol they made tasted amazing, Elmina also offered some celestial peach wine to her grandfather. She asked Ashto for permission to visit the High Elves village. Ashto remembered that they had stocked more than enough resources. He asked how far the place was, and Elmina confirmed it would take a week of walking. She told Ashto that the village had various herbs he might find useful. Ashto agreed to visit the village since it could help develop his village. They could also solve the problem that started with alcohol by using alcohol. Ashto then realized Elmina mentioned her grandfather. Elmina confirmed that her grandfather was the village elder and over 100,000 years old. Ashto and the others soon prepared 5 bottles of celestial peach wine and 5 barrels each of red and white grape wines. He claimed it would be enough to establish relations with the village. Mej would be their guide, and Ashto saw that Elmina and Balgidlo would also be joining them. Elmina worried that Ashto agreed to her sudden request since the path to the High Elves village was a bit rough. It was the same route that Mej and the others took, but they needed to improve the road for carts and wagons passing by. Ashto then recalled that there was something that could help them. He pulled out Shella's grimoire and was sure he had read a spell that could assist in their current situation. They found the spell called Tree Move, which literally moved the trees to clear a path after asking the trees to do so. Elmina wondered if that would really work, and Ashto claimed it might. Ashto decided to try it out, and as a plant mage, he asked the trees to clear a path for them. The trees' roots then started moving and a path was cleared. Everyone was impressed, and Sherry was proud of her big brother. Ashto claimed he was just as shocked as they were. Now, they didn't have any more issues transporting goods to the elves' village. It was time to get moving, and Ashto asked Balgildo to handle the cart. Instead of pulling it, Balgildo casually lifted the cart and asked his son Shinha to deal with any monsters along the way. Ashto saw that the cart's purpose had just disappeared. The trees continued clearing a path as Ashto used the spell from Shella's grimoire. Sherry called her brother's nature magic amazing since it could do many things. She wondered what their father would say about Ashto's magic. Ashto didn't really care as long as it could help the villagers. Sherry looked proud, seeing him act like a true mayor. Ashto asked her not to tease him further. Sherry then asked to read Shella's grimoire and Ashto gave her permission. Sherry received the book and was amazed to find it was from the Emerald Dragon. However, she began cursing because she couldn't open the grimoire. She used all her strength, but it wouldn't budge. Ashto wondered if Sherry was joking. Sherry then called Shinha to help open the book. Even the strong demon ogre couldn't open it with brute force. This proved Sherry's claim that it wouldn't open. Ashto then realized that only the person Shella entrusted it to could open the grimoire. Shinha asked Balgildo to try opening it, but Ashto stopped him and took the book. Besides, only the person meant to open the book could read it, as it would appear as blank pages to everyone else. 4 days later, everyone could see the village of the High Elves. Elmina said they needed to ask for permission to enter and told the others to wait. However, Mej and the other elves reminded Elmina that she couldn't enter yet because she had been exiled for 1,000 years. Mej assured them that despite the village's strict laws, they would negotiate with the elder. Elmina felt disappointed, and Mej asked Balgildo for the cart since they would carry it with wind magic. Ashto, who was slow to realize something, wondered why they needed 7 High Elves as escorts. Mej and the others greeted the guards on duty and asked for a meeting with their elder. She asked if they could bring a human inside with them. The guard was surprised, and Mej explained that a small village was nearby and Ashto was the mayor. The girls then started sharing information about things like fruits they had never seen before, the most delicious alcohol, tasty grapes they had brought before, beers, and distilled spirits. The guards were overwhelmed and asked the girls to talk one at a time. In the end, they got permission to go inside. As they entered the village, Ashto and the others were impressed to see many High Elves living there. Ashto saw a huge tree and wondered if it was the Yggdrasil. Mej then suggested they greet the village elder first, who was Elmina's grandfather. She believed he would be in a good mood upon receiving the goods in their cart, especially the peach wine. Like Elmina, the village elder loved high-quality beverages. Soon after, they met Elmina's grandfather, who was glad to see the elves return home. Mej and the others greeted him. He asked about Elmina's whereabouts and wondered if she had already reflected on what she had done. However, his own question was interrupted when he noticed Ashto and asked who he was. Mej introduced Ashto as the mayor of the newly established village where Elmina now lived. The elder was pleased to see a new forest resident and praised Mej and the others for guiding him. Ashto then asked what the first part of the talk was about, and Mej explained that their initial mission was to watch over Elmina per the elder's orders. They didn't know about Ashto's village at first. Ashto then asked about the previous support he got from the High Elves. Mej admitted that some young elves found the idea of creating a new village fun and snuck out. She apologized to Ashto for keeping things a secret the whole time. Realizing the elder was worried about Elmina, Ashto knew what the elder wanted. He formally introduced himself to the elder and said Elmina was doing well and had been a great help to the village. He said he wanted to establish a relationship with her home village first. Ashto then presented his gift, the celestial peach wine. Upon hearing the name of the drink, the elder felt doubtful, but thanked Ashto for the gesture. He asked a servant for a cup and immediately poured the wine to drink. The elder was shocked as he sipped the wine and claimed it should be impossible. However, he couldn't deny it was truly the celestial peach wine. He felt happy since he hadn't tasted it for ages. He then chugged down the bottle while exclaiming how it was worthy to be called the Emerald Dragon's wine. He then asked Ashto where he got it from. Ashto confessed it was one of his village's products. The elder exclaimed he would pay any price, like the best rare medicinal plants and high elves to cultivate. Ashto tried to calm him down, but the elder was overly excited about tasting the supreme drink. Soon after, an elf who acted like a secretary recited a list of products to be exchanged between the two villages. Ashto and the elder finalized the deal by shaking hands. Ashto then tried to talk about Elmina. The elder said his granddaughter might be a drunkard and a glutton, but she was a good girl at heart. He hoped she could bring years of happiness as his wife, binding their families together. Ashto tried to thank the elder for his words but was taken aback and asked what the elder meant. The elder told him that Elmina, who was nearly 9,000 years old, should not have any issues with childbearing. Just then, Mage brought over Elmina as the elder requested. Elmina apologized to her grandfather, but the elder was fine since he had better alcohol now, and told her to forget about the punishment. He then asked Elmina to work hard as Ashto's wife. Elmina thanked her grandfather and paused upon hearing the word wife. The elder said Elmina was already at the age to settle down, and his mind would be at peace if she was with Ashto. Elmina got mad and asked Ashto what was happening. Ashto told her not to ask him. Sherry then exclaimed that her brother already had Muti. Balgildo could hear their loud voices from outside. Everyone soon celebrated their fortunate meetings. Elmina was glad her exile had been lifted, but she had another problem to think about. Balgildo was famous among the elven kids, and the elder expressed to each other how blessed they were to have met. The elder asked again if Ashto wanted Elmina as his wife or if he would consider polygamy, but Ashto refused. The marriage talks then ended and Ashto asked about the Yggdrasil. He was given permission to see it up close, but the elder mentioned they had something troubling them. Ashto got worried, wondering if the tree was sick. The elder then shared how a monster had recently appeared and had been gnawing on the tree's roots. They had been trying to drive it away, but the monster lived deep underground. He sighed, saying the Yggdrasil would die at this rate. However, it would be a problem for the next 200 years or so. Ashto could see that it was a legendary tree for a reason. The elder then confessed another problem. The tree's guardian deity, the great wolf Fenrir, kept howling without purpose. Just when Ashto felt confused, Fenrir howled. The elder explained that the howl meant Fenrir blamed itself for failing as a guardian since it couldn't drive out the monster eating the tree. It howled every night and the elves couldn't bear it anymore. Ashto claimed he could sympathize from the bottom of his heart. He then thought about the invasive monster and worried that it would cause more damage when threatened. While thinking about the underground monster, he realized there was something written about it in Shella's grimoire. He then asked the elder if he could handle the problematic monster since he knew something that could help. Soon after, Ashto went to see the Yggdrasil up close so he could study it to find ways to deal with the monster. Just then, he noticed the Fenrir resting nearby. Elmina happily greeted her. Ashto was impressed seeing her up close and also wanted to touch her fur. Elmina could see that Fenrir already had her pups, and Fenrir agreed that they were a hassle. Fenrir then asked who the humans with Elmina were. Elmina introduced Ashto as the village mayor where she was currently living. Ashto then greeted her. Elmina then asked about the troubles Fenrir was having with the monster that had recently made a nest in the tree's roots. Fenrir then recalled it and expressed her frustration. Elmina told her not to worry since Ashto would help. Ashto sighed and checked the grimoire again. He was certain the spell would work if the monster was really underground. Ashto then used the spell Mana Blood and something jelly-like appeared at the end of his wand. Fenrir asked what it was but suddenly found the smell horrifying. Even her pups cried, and the wolves ran away as far as they could. However, the others around Ashto didn't sense anything at all. Ashto realized that the spell only affected magical beasts. He then dropped the jelly-like thing on the ground and it disappeared. He wondered if it would really work. Just then, the ground started trembling and the noise grew louder. A centipede then emerged from the ground, making the others shriek in fear and disgust. The centipede thrashed around as if in pain. Ashto was surprised to see it crying. Balgildo then stepped forward to handle the centipede. The monster continued crying and trembling in fear. Ashto asked Balgildo to wait because he sensed something was wrong. He then looked up a spell that would let him befriend and talk to any creature and cast it on himself. He checked if it worked and suddenly heard the centipede crying out loud and complaining about a bad smell. Ashto called out to the centipede and asked if it was the one chewing on the Yggdrasil. The centipede was shocked. Ashto then asked it to stop gnawing on the roots because it was bothering the elves. However, the centipede was still shocked that a human could understand him. Ashto told it to pull itself together or they would exterminate it if it caused trouble again. The centipede agreed and apologized. Ashto was glad they reached a conclusion and told the elder that the centipede would stop causing trouble. Ashto then sat down to talk with the centipede to find out why it was gnawing on the Yggdrasil's roots. The centipede said it was hungry, and since the Yggdrasil was rich in mana, it thought it wouldn't matter if it ate here and there. Ashto realized the centipede's food source was mana. The centipede confirmed this but said it could eat almost anything. However, the forest had been disoriented lately, and it couldn't hunt anymore. Ashto then asked if it was fine with eating fruits. The centipede was shocked since it hadn't eaten a fruit in over 100 years because there was always hot competition in the forest. It exclaimed that a weakling like it couldn't get a chance to get a fruit. Ashto suddenly got an idea and introduced the centipede as their village's new resident. Ashto assured the others that the centipede would seem cute once they got used to him. He then asked the centipede for his name, and he introduced himself as the King Centipede. Since the name was long, Ashto decided to call him Centi. Centi cried because he felt touched after receiving a nickname. Soon after, Ashto and the others loaded carts on Centi's back. Ashto thanked the elder for the cooperation between the two villages. The elder was impressed that Ashto managed to save the Yggdrasil, and even tame the troublesome monster. Seeing that Ashto was a capable mayor, the elder gave him a Yggdrasil sapling. He said it sprouted where Ashto dropped his mana liquid and assumed it was the Yggdrasil's way of thanking Ashto. Ashto gratefully received the sapling. Just then, one of Fenrir's pups suddenly got attached to Ashto. Fenrir asked Ashto to take the pup with him since the Yggdrasil would soon need a guardian. She also confirmed that her pup had already chosen Ashto as his master. Ashto accepted both the sapling and Fenrir's pup in his arms. Everyone then loaded everything and rode on Centi's back. Ashto reminded Centi that this would be his first task, and Centi got excited. He sped out of the elven village at high speed, and the elder could only hear Ashto's fading scream. The elder felt happy to see interesting things at his age thanks to Ashto. Soon after, Centi was amazed to see a nice-looking village, but no one reacted to him because everyone was unconscious. Ashto was impressed that the journey, which should have taken 5 days, was completed in a single day, but everyone felt terrible from the ride. Daimdo and Mayuri then welcomed them back. Daimdo stared at Centi for a while before he pulled out his sword. Mayuri fainted at the sight of a monster. Ashto quickly defended Centi and everything was fine. Centi soon received some fruits and wondered if Ashto was sure about giving them. Ashto confirmed that it was his reward for the fast travel. He also promised to give fruits every day since Centi was now part of the village. Ashto was also glad that the villagers had already taken a liking to Centi and assumed that things would be fine. Centi's main task was to transport goods between Ashto's village and the High Elves village. While Ashto provided alcohol and fruits, the High Elves gave medicinal herbs and books in return. Ashto wondered if it was fine to keep receiving books. Elmina shared that her grandfather's hobby was to write and that he had 800,000 books of his works in a storeroom. Ashto was impressed to see some fantasy genre among the books. Since there were a lot of books, Ashto decided to build a library. Centi wasn't the only resident they had picked up. The growing spell was also working well on the eel sapling. The Fenrir pup, now named Shiro, was with them too. Ashto reminded Shiro not to stray too far from the tree and to always return home after someone picked him up. But that was just Shiro's nature as the guardian of Yggdrasil. Ashto then checked Shela's grimoire for information about Yggdrasil. He discovered that only a branch was needed to create an elixir. He also needed to add leaves from Alraun and Mandrake. However, Ashto was uneasy about cutting a part of Yggdrasil and was reluctant to do so. Suddenly, Shiro leapt into the tree and started climbing, making Ashto wonder what the pup was up to. Shiro soon returned with a branch that had a fruit on it. Ashto was surprised to see that Yggdrasil could also bear fruit. The fruit looked like a small golden apple, but it didn't seem unripe. Mayuri then suggested they try the fruit since Shiro had given it to them. Sherry agreed and suggested they eat the fruit before others found out. They decided to go to the shelter house to try it out. Ashto sliced the fruit into pieces, and he, Sherry, and Mayuri enjoyed its tangy and sweet taste. It was so delicious that they finished it all. As they walked back to the village, they ran into Elmina and Medj. When Elmina saw Ashto outside his room, she thought he must have grown tired of staying inside all the time. Ashto asked where they were going. Elmina said they were going to pray to the Yggdrasil, which was a sacred tree for elves. She explained that if they prayed enough, it might produce a fruit of life, a fruit that only existed in elven legends. According to the story, the Yggdrasil could only produce one fruit, and though Elmina had never seen it herself, she had heard it looked like a small apple. Ashto, Sherry, and Mayuri all looked very worried. Elmina wondered why they were sweating. Trembling, Ashto asked what would happen if someone ate the fruit. Elmina then said that it was known as the Apple of Immortality and that eating it would grant eternal life. Ashto became anxious and asked if Elmina was serious. Later, Ashto met up with Shella and told her about the fruit. He wondered what would happen to him, Sherry, and Mayuri. Shella giggled and congratulated them. She said they were no longer just regular humans, but larger humans. She explained that in the distant past a few elves had eaten the fruit and given birth to high elves. Now the three of them had the potential to create a new human race. She assured them not to worry because they would not become immortals, but would have longer lifespans, similar to elves. Their natural aging would slow down, and they should enjoy their extended youth. Ashto couldn't believe what had happened after treating the fruit as an afternoon snack. Unlike elves, humans like him weren't meant to live forever just like that. Ashto felt bad for dragging Sherry and Mayuri into this problem, and wondered if they would ever forgive him. Sherry didn't understand what Ashto was talking about. She said she was surprised but not upset. Mayuri even said that having a longer lifespan wasn't a bad thing. The girls also pointed out that their villagers had longer lifespans to begin with, and now the three of them could live on equal terms with them. Ashto's worries about the girls vanished. It seemed like another opportunity for humans, but Ashto didn't feel indifferent. Instead, he felt refreshed. Shella then said that if the High Elves had found the fruit themselves, they would have asked Ashto to eat it anyway. She knew everyone would be happy if Ashto confessed what had happened. The High Elves learned about the incident and were pleased to know that they could now live together forever. The Dwarves and the Silver Cat tribe were also happy to hear this news. Ashto couldn't believe that no one was even surprised after becoming a superhuman. A few days later, Ashto went for a walk and saw someone getting worried after spotting Shiro. The fairies looked scared as Shiro chased them like a dog chasing butterflies. The fairies noticed Ashto and asked him to help. Ashto called over Shiro and the Fenrir pup calmed down. The fairies then continued to check if they would be safe. A representative approached Ashto and thanked him for saving their lives. They were afraid that a monster like Shiro might eat them. Ashto reassured them that Shiro wouldn't eat them and then asked for their names. The fairies introduced themselves as High Pixies, a type of creature Ashto had never heard of before. The representative explained that they traveled from place to place searching for tasty mana and had come across the Yggdrasil. They decided to move to the tree but didn't expect to find a monster guarding it. Ashto realized that the ill had drawn them in. The High Pixie then asked if Ashto was connected to the tree. Ashto confirmed that he was the one who had planted and grown it. The pixie confirmed this because the tree's mana and Ashto's mana tasted the same. Although Ashto looked anxious, he allowed them to live near the Yggdrasil. He warned them that the area might be noisy because other people lived nearby as well. Despite this, the High Pixie celebrated, glad to have found a place to stay. The representative introduced herself as Philharmonica, or Phil for short. Ashto happily welcomed Phil and her clan. According to Elmina, High Pixies once lived near the Yggdrasil in the High Elves village. However, over time the mana grew weaker, so the Pixies left in search of a better source of mana. Elmina hadn't seen many of them for a long time. The High Pixies could eat regular food and survive by feeding on the Yggdrasil's mana every 10 days. Since they had been living in the village, August offered to build them houses. Even small houses were worth the effort, and the demon hounds were excited to make small pieces of furniture. In just a few days, the trees in the village became homes for the High Pixies. Ashto was impressed by how everyone adjusted to the changes so well. Phil thanked Ashto for all the help. Ashto was happy to assist and then asked why Phil spent so much time with him instead of feeding from the ill. Phil explained that she preferred mana because it tasted better. Filtered through Ashto's body, it had a fuller flavor. In a few days, Ashto saw the progress of the library's construction. He was excited, but August told him to be patient as it would take some time. Ashto was surprised by August's appearance and assured him he didn't mean to rush. August explained that since this was one of the few things Ashto had requested, they were being very careful with the library. He then asked if they could get help from the hardworking Silver Cat clan. August felt awkward asking the ladies to do physical labor, especially since the Silver Cats were already busy with house chores. He felt bad about asking for more help. Ashto agreed that everyone had limits no matter how hardworking they were. He remembered seeing many Silver Cats going in and out of the clinic and knew they were also involved in farming, butchering, and textile making. He wondered if he could ask someone else for help, but the 10 demon hounds they had were already busy with butchering, and the demon ogres were occupied with hunting for food. Seeing Ashto frustrated, August asked him to forget his request. Ashto realized they needed more villagers, but August told him to leave it to fate. Ashto felt disappointed because his magic couldn't help in getting more people. Meanwhile, from a cliff in the distance, a man smirked as he looked over the village. He could sense the abundant mana. He scratched his head, noting it was just as he had expected from the Emerald Dragon's village. The man with horns and his followers simply smirked while watching the view from the cliff. Later, bottles with shiny contents were seen on Ashto's table. He asked Phil what they were, and the pixie representative explained that they were fairy nectar, a special syrup only High Pixies could make. She claimed Ashto would love its taste. Nectar. Fairy girls. Interesting. Ashto tasted the nectar and enjoyed its sweetness. It was thick and rich, but it went down smoothly. The sweetness had a deep flavor that didn't feel plain. Phil explained how they extracted the nectar from flowers and fruits, then refined it with their mana. She suggested drizzling it on toast or cookies and mixing it with any alcohol to make fairy mead. Ashto realized how amazing the nectar was and thought Mayuri would love it too. Just like Phil mentioned, mixing the nectar with wine, ale, or any drink instantly turned it into fairy mead. Ashto wondered about the logic behind the drink's transformation. Sherry also enjoyed the toast with nectar, and Mayuri agreed. As a baker, she felt excited knowing there was an easy way to create new desserts just by spreading fairy nectar on anything. Phil was happy that everyone loved it, and Ashto thanked the pixie representative for the treat. Suddenly, Elmina showed up and asked Ashto to check something. She said a very huge guy had just appeared. Everyone then went outside and Ashto looked to see what was happening in the plaza. There, the horned man from before appeared and asked if Ashto was the mayor. Ashto, sweating nervously, confirmed it and asked who the man was. The man told Ashto not to be scared, assuring him he wouldn't eat him. He explained that he heard about Ashto's place from an old friend and came to check it out. Thinking the man came for money, Ashto quickly said they didn't have much. The man laughed and slapped Ashto on the back, telling him to relax. Ashto, in pain, still couldn't figure out who the man really was, but felt relieved that he seemed harmless. Suddenly, Shella showed up and asked what the man Volcanus was doing. She scolded him for teasing her Ashto. Volcanus was happy to see Shella and said he came after hearing some rumors. Shella complained about how hot-blooded Volcanus always was. Sherry, breaking into a cold sweat, wondered if Shella really called him Volcanus. The man confirmed his name and announced that he was the ruby dragon Volcanus. Volcanus was then invited into the banquet hall and enjoyed its atmosphere. His followers seemed to agree. Ashto began to wonder if Volcanus's followers were demi-human lizards. He only knew that demi-humans were a unique race, different from beast folk. Ashto felt uneasy seeing them just standing instead of eating and drinking, so he asked Volcanus about them. Volcanus told Ashto not to worry, explaining that they were disciplined underlings who acted properly around their superiors. Shella then asked why Volcanus really came to Ashto's village. Volcanus explained that he had a favor to ask. He said his old body had been feeling itchy lately, and it had been thousands of years since his last bath. He wondered if Ashto could take care of his underlings while he was in the bath. Ashto agreed without hesitation, and Volcanus was thrilled, slapping Ashto on the shoulders in excitement. Shella just giggled at their interaction. Ashto offered to show Volcanus the way to the bath, but Volcanus suddenly mentioned meeting again in 2,000 years. This confused Ashto until Shella explained that Volcanus's bath was far beneath the surface, in a deep, bubbling spring of flame. Volcanus claimed that no other hot spring in the world could satisfy him. He then invited Shella to join him, but the Emerald Dragon quickly declined. Ashto was stunned by how everything about Volcanus seemed larger than life. Volcanus then called his underlings and instructed them to live and work hard for Ashto. The lizardmen quickly confirmed their master's orders. Volcanus appointed one of them, named Grodd, to take charge. They bowed and wished Volcanus a good bath, and the ruby dragon left. Volcanus hoped that he and Ashto would meet again in 2,000 years. Before Ashto could finish his farewell, a strong gust of wind blew as Volcanus transformed into his dragon form and soared into the sky. Ashto could only watch as Volcanus disappeared into the horizon. Sherry, in disbelief, couldn't grasp that the loud old man was actually an ancient dragon. Soon after, Ashto discovered that Volcanus's underlings weren't ordinary lizardmen. Under the protection of the ruby dragon, they had evolved into salamanders. This is how they became the new residents of Ashto's village. Thanks to their arrival, the labor shortage problem was solved overnight. Ashto couldn't help but wonder if he was the only one who noticed how everything was becoming a little too convenient. For some reason, the salamanders showed Ashto an unusual amount of respect, calling him uncle. Ashto often found himself confused by their behavior. Another peaceful day came. Ludvan delivered a cauldron that Ashto had asked him to make. The High Dwarf proudly claimed he could craft such an item in his sleep. However, it was his first time making a cauldron out of orichalcum, and in his 9,000 years of life he had never heard of anyone doing such a thing. Orichalcum was a legendary ore, even stronger than damask and exceptional in absorbing mana. As for how Ashto got his hands on such a rare mineral, let's flash back to when a talking mole unexpectedly appeared in front of Ashto and August. Ashto was confused, but August immediately recognized the mole and called him Panta. The two greeted each other warmly after not meeting for a long time. August introduced Panta as a member of the Black Mole clan, who had done a lot for August's hometown. Ashto then introduced himself and shook hands with Panta. Though all he could see was a creature resembling a stuffed animal, Panta soon confessed that he had a favor to ask Ashto. He had heard that the wine made in Ashto's village was world-class, and wanted to trade some for his clan. Ashto was surprised, as this was his first trade agreement with another party. However, he was more concerned about how someone like Panta could drink wine in the first place. While watching the conversation, August laughed and pointed out that this was Ashto's chance to recruit skilled miners like the Black Moles. Ashto then invited Ponta to his place to discuss the details of the trade agreement. They all sat down to talk, and Ponta made it clear that he wanted the best wine from Ashto's village and was ready to offer a fortune in return. Elmina guessed that the payment would likely be rare ores that only the Black Moles could dig up. Ponta confirmed this, saying he had all sorts of valuable ores to trade. August shared that the mine near the village was difficult to work in since the High Dwarves had to split their focus between mining and other jobs. Ashto was surprised to learn that the village already had a mine. Ponta then offered to call in his companions to help work in Ashto's village. Silmeria recalled how the Black Moles were experts of the earth, able to soften the soil and evaluate its condition with precision, which made them very helpful for agriculture. Ponta, embarrassed by the praise, was called cute by everyone. Seeing how well the idea was received, Ashto suggested they move on to negotiating the terms of the agreement. Since it benefited both sides, Ponta quickly agreed. As a result of the negotiations, 20 members of the Black Mole clan came to the village to work in the mines and help the farmers. The workers who stayed in the village also enjoyed drinking as much as they wanted. On top of the ores mined in Ashto's village, they also received more from the Black Mole clan. Ponta then shared a list of ores his clan had available. Ashto, already aware that the land of Oberstein was rich, was still surprised to find that the ground beneath him was full of rare ores. His eyes caught sight of orichalcum on the list, and he recalled that one of the key ingredients for synthesizing elixir required a cauldron made from orichalcum. He felt a sense of relief, knowing he had secured another ingredient for the legendary medicine. Phil noticed Ashto grinning and asked what he was thinking about, but Ashto decided to keep it a secret for the time being. He was pleased with the trade agreement with Ponta, and the Black Mole was equally happy. In the present, Ashto was relieved to finally have the orichalcum cauldron he needed. He also remembered instructing Ludvan to use the leftover orichalcum for something beneficial to the village. Ludvan, without hesitation, pulled out a sword, and Ashto nervously asked what it was. Ludvan proudly introduced it as the 7-star rainbow sword, explaining that he enjoyed the challenge of crafting it. He claimed the sword was of such high quality that it could be a national treasure for a kingdom. Casually, he handed it over to Ashto, reminding him that, as mayor, it belonged to him. Shocked, Ashto protested that he was a magic user and couldn't wield a sword. Ludvan then suggested hanging it on a wall as decoration, calling it a token of appreciation from the elder dwarves. Ashto, still confused, felt he should be the one thanking them, but Ludvan grew impatient and told him to simply accept the sword. Ashto soon took his cauldron to his room and let out a sigh of relief. He was glad to have obtained the 4th requirement for making the elixir. That left 4 more, but as he looked over the remaining items, they seemed extremely difficult to find. He hadn't expected to get the 4th one so easily and quickly. With the extended lifespan he had recently gained, Ashto was confident that he would eventually gather everything he needed. Lying on his bed, Ashto reminded himself that this was just the beginning. He couldn't focus solely on synthesizing the elixir. He also needed to read the books the High Elves had given him, and properly manage the growing village by appointing official representatives from each tribe. He felt happy to have so many things to do and look forward to. The future ahead of him excited Ashto. Suddenly, Silmeria knocked on the door and informed him that he had a visitor. She mentioned that it was someone she didn't recognize. Ashto asked if it was someone from a new race, but Silmeria, looking uneasy, explained that this visitor felt different from most who had come to the village before. Ashto went outside, remembering how he had grown used to strange events and visitors. He felt confident that no matter who the person was, he would be able to handle it. Just then, Norma and Kirinji called out to him, reporting that a suspicious person was standing outside the village. Knowing it was the visitor Silmeria mentioned, Ashto calmly asked Kirinji not to label everyone they met for the first time as suspicious. Just then, a proud-sounding voice called out to Ashto, assuming he was the mayor. A man with pointy ears, a tall nose, and formal attire appeared, respectfully greeting Ashto. Seeing the flashy man, Ashto agreed that this visitor looked truly suspicious. The man introduced himself as Dimitri of the Devil Salesman. Hearing where Dimitri came from made Ashto feel uneasy. Dimitri walked around Ashto, sizing him up, and confirmed what he had heard from rumors. He tried to start a business conversation, but Ashto quickly refused and walked away, asking Norma and Kirinji to escort Dimitri out of the village. Despite feeling flustered by the kid's intimidating presence, Dimitri pleaded for Ashto to listen to his business proposal, as he had come a long way to the village. Ashto pointed out how suspicious Dimitri seemed. Dimitri, in turn, asked what part of him seemed suspicious, claiming he was a normal, upstanding salesman of good character. He urged Ashto to look into his eyes to see the truth. Ashto paused for a moment and stared into Dimitri's eyes as requested. However, Dimitri's expression suddenly darkened, making Ashto even more doubtful. That was enough for Ashto to decide to walk away. Norma and Kirinji apprehended Dimitri and told him not to return. Ashto recalled how he had often seen greedy opportunists visit the Estrella estate in the past, so he was used to people like Dimitri. Dimitri continued shouting as he was escorted away. Phil came over and asked what was going on. Ashto admitted that Dimitri reminded him of past experiences. Phil suggested they eat some snacks to take his mind off it, and Ashto agreed. Back home, Ashto found Panta happily munching on Mayudi's cookies. Panta offered to dig up some rare minerals for Mayudi in exchange, but Mayudi declined, saying she didn't need any jewelry. In the end, Panta was treated like a huggable stuffed animal, much to everyone's amusement. Shortly after, Dimitri was imprisoned, looking at Ashto with pleading eyes. Norma and Kirinji carried the caged Dimitri away. Ashto wondered how things ended up like this. Norma and Kirinji reported that they caught Dimitri trying to sneak into the village again. Norma suggested throwing the caged Dimitri into the river to let him float downstream. Ashto disagreed with her suggestion. Dimitri then exclaimed that he only came for business, as Ashto's village had become the first major growth in Oberstein. He complained about being cast out without a chance to explain himself, just because he appeared suspicious. Ashto reminded him that he called himself the Devil Salesman. Dimitri angrily asked what was wrong with that, since he was from the Diabolos clan, a rare branch of the Devil race. He even claimed that Nyx, the Onyx dragon of the 7 legendary dragons, was their patron. Dimitri argued that not trusting him was the same as not trusting the Onyx dragon. Seeing how desperate Dimitri was, Ashto decided to listen to him. Dimitri felt relieved that Ashto was now seeing him differently. Ashto realized it was better to hear Dimitri's side directly than to call in the other races, who would only cause trouble. He then asked Norma and Kirinji to release Dimitri. Soon after, they went to the reception hall, which looked impressive, and it was their first time using it. Dimitri praised the structure and complimented the elder dwarves for their craftsmanship. He was also amazed to see members of the Silver Cat clan, just as he had heard from rumors. The others eyed him with suspicion. Kirinji told Ashto not to worry, saying he and Norma would easily slit Dimitri's throat if he acted even slightly suspicious. Ashto felt scared and didn't know how to respond to Kirinji. Dimitri then requested to begin the discussions. He formally introduced himself as someone from the Hell City of Beelzebub, located in the northern parts of Oberstein. Ashto introduced himself as well, but found it hard to believe that a place called Hell City and other settlements existed in Oberstein. Dimitri assumed that a human like Ashto was unfamiliar with the geography and history of the area. With a creepy smile, he offered to educate him. Ashto didn't like the way Dimitri smiled. With a snap of his fingers, a large piece of parchment appeared on the table in front of them. Ashto was amazed by how Dimitri used magic without a wand or saying any spells. The paper showed the boundaries of the own territory. Dimitri then drew circles on the map, marking the human kingdom of Big Baylog and the Dragonkin kingdom, Dragon Road. Ashto's village was just a dot in the middle. Meanwhile, Dimitri's hometown was in the north, shown as a larger circle compared to the others. The map was meant to help Ashto understand the locations. Dimitri also mentioned that other races had started building settlements in Oberstein. However, even the immortal Diabolos clan didn't know many details about them. Ashto looked at the map and couldn't believe Big Baylog was so small. He found it hard to grasp that a single noble house could manage such a vast territory. Dimitri then suggested they get down to business. He explained that his trade involved exchanging goods from Beelzebub to the smaller villages and towns in Oberstein. When Ashto heard this, he asked why they were trading instead of buying and selling. Dimitri pointed out that the territory was vast, and most settlements didn't have a coinage system. He made a living by exchanging goods and then selling the traded items back in Beelzebub. He mentioned that he had heard about a young human who established a village in Oberstein and brought together members from different races. Dimitri wanted to see if it was true. He was amazed that Ashto had members of the fiercest race known, the mighty ogre demons. On top of that, he had just discovered members of the Silver Cat clan and High Pixies. Based on the structure of the reception hall, Dimitri also assumed that elder dwarves, high elves, and demon hounds were part of the village. He even spotted a salamander, a race blessed by the ruby dragon. He couldn't believe there were so many different races in Ashto's village. Dimitri became serious again and asked Ashto if he could set up a storefront in the village. Ashto got confused and asked if Dimitri wasn't just a peddler. Dimitri denied this and explained that he had been setting up storefronts in every village and town he visited. Using space magic, each branch store was linked to the main store in Beelzebub. Once he established a location, he could come and go as he pleased. Ashto agreed that this was an efficient way of trading. Through Dimitri's store, Ashto would not only gain access to products from Beelzebub, but also from other villages where Dimitri had branches. Ashto realized the proposal was more interesting than he had expected, so he decided to approve Dimitri's request. However, he wanted to ask a few more questions. Dimitri promised to answer them as best he could. They continued to talk about Beelzebub and the different races and villages in Oberstein, especially their unique goods. Thanks to Dimitri, Ashto's village would now have access to all of them. Shortly after, Ashto took Dimitri to their brewery. Dimitri hadn't expected alcohol to be the village's main product. He was also surprised to see produce, grains, and textiles made by the demon hounds, as well as various equipment made by elder dwarves. What impressed him the most was the celestial peach wine, which could be considered their showpiece product. As Ashto watched Dimitri eagerly evaluate the products, he felt conflicted about whether Dimitri was truly an honest businessman. Dimitri seemed more than impressed with the quality of the products. After removing his glasses and giving a creepy smile, Dimitri said this would be the start of a very long partnership. Despite this, Ashto still had doubts about Dimitri's credibility. In the end, however, they signed a contract and Dimitri seemed happy to work with Ashto. Regarding the store, Dimitri wondered if the elder dwarves could build one for him. Ashto didn't see any issue with that, but was more impressed by how prepared Dimitri was, as he had brought a blueprint with him. Dimitri explained that it was normal since all his store branches followed the same design. Because of his space magic, he needed to make sure everything was uniform. Ashto agreed with him. Dimitri then turned around and said he had things to prepare. He bade farewell and snapped his fingers. A sudden gust of wind appeared and the devil vanished into thin air. Ashto was impressed and thought the Diabolos clan must take great pride in their magical abilities. Kirinji asked Ashto if they could really trust Dimitri. Ashto said it would be fine for now. When Ki asked why Ashto trusted the devil, Ashto admitted he half trusted and half doubted Dimitri. But the deals they made were good for the future of their village. Besides, Ashto felt safe knowing the others were there to handle Dimitri if he ever tried to cheat them. Kirinji admired how optimistic his mayor was. Ashto said it was all because of the support from everyone around him. He then looked at the parchment Dimitri left behind and said he would also make some preparations. Soon after, Dimitri opened a branch of his store in Ashto's village. Ashto stared blankly at the signboard and realized the village still hadn't decided on a name. Curious, he entered the store where Dimitri greeted him warmly. Dimitri began praising the elder dwarves for their exceptional craftsmanship, marveling at how quickly the building had been constructed. To him, everything looked magnificent. Dimitri then presented a box to Ashto as payment for the construction. Inside, there were several rare medicinal herbs native to the Beelzebub area. Knowing Ashto was an apothecary, Dimitri had specifically gathered these herbs to settle the costs. Ashto seemed pleased with the gift. Dimitri then asked for another favor. He wanted to demonstrate some of his merchandise to the villagers in the future, but faced a challenge. The villagers distrusted him and refused to accept his flyers, which wasn't surprising considering Dimitri's unsettling smile. He requested Ashto's help in promoting the store, believing his products would benefit the villagers. To convince Ashto, Dimitri revealed an example item, which left Ashto genuinely impressed. Silently, Ashto agreed it could be helpful. A few days later, the villagers gathered at Dimitri's store, though only because the mayor had personally requested it. Once everything was ready, Dimitri greeted the crowd with his signature devilish smile and introduced himself. He also introduced Lizabelle, his assistant and the branch's new manager, who shared his unsettling grin. The villagers couldn't help but feel uneasy about the pair. Dimitri then got down to business. He admitted he had come to their humble village to collaborate with its talented residents and promised fair compensation in return. He highlighted products designed for craftsmen, particularly the dwarves. When the elder dwarves commented that they could simply make the products themselves, Dimitri dismissed their remarks and unveiled something unexpected. The elder dwarves discovered an unfamiliar tool, which appeared ordinary to Dimitri but strange to them. While examining it, the dwarves insisted they had no need for weapons. Dimitri clarified that it wasn't a weapon but a device that could transform their work. He demonstrated how to open the tool's cartridge and load it with dwarven-made nails. After preparing it, he asked Isabel to bring a wooden board, which he placed on a flat surface. Pointing the tool at the board, he pulled the trigger. The tool emitted loud, sharp sounds as it drove the nails in quickly and accurately. Dimitri introduced it as a nail gun. The dwarves admitted it seemed much faster than hammering nails manually, calling it convenient. Dimitri felt satisfied with their reaction. Next, he unveiled another item, a chainsaw, which the elder dwarves immediately labeled as odd. Dimitri asked if they found chopping wood boring or time-consuming, then explained the chainsaw's purpose. Activating it, he demonstrated how it easily outperformed an axe in cutting wood. He claimed the chainsaw could make their work 10 or even 20 times more efficient. Since the dwarves had constructed his branch store, Dimitri offered the nail gun and chainsaw as gifts, while suggesting they consider purchasing more in the future. He also announced he had assembled additional products tailored for different races and invited everyone to line up. Seeing how smoothly the demonstration went, Ashto felt pleased. After the demonstration, Dimitri expressed his gratitude to Ashto. Ashto noticed how easily everyone accepted what Dimitri offered, even though they didn't fully understand everything at first. Initially, Ashto had his doubts, but Dimitri proved to be highly persuasive. Dimitri explained that all the items he presented earlier were available for trade at any time in the village. He also mentioned that his store was open to accommodate specific needs, accepting special orders as well. Dimitri assured Ashto that he would personally handle anything Ashto might request or need. Ashto felt relieved to see the villagers finally welcoming Dimitri's presence in the community. In appreciation, he gifted 10 bottles of celestial peach wine to celebrate the store's opening. Dimitri was touched by Ashto's generosity and hoped their good relationship would last forever. With that, Dimitri's store opened smoothly without any problems. Thanks to his goods, the village's development advanced rapidly, improving day by day. Ashto's library was nearing completion, which brought him great satisfaction. However, Dimitri's presence also brought some unexpected challenges to the village, but that was a story for another time. Not long after, Ashto visited the store again, this time with Sherry. She curiously asked if Dimitri truly had everything. Dimitri confidently claimed his store offered a wide range of goods for all ages, genders, and races. It included food, luxury items, books, cookware, exercise equipment, and various tools. He also carried toys for children of different races, clothing, educational materials, and child-rearing supplies. When Dimitri attempted to show something inappropriate, Ashto quickly intervened, covering Sherry's ears to shield her from the impure words. Another day began, and Ashto decided to go for a leisure walk. However, he found himself dealing with a clingy elf who latched onto him, calling his name in an irritating tone. He guessed right away that she wanted something and told her to be quiet. Elmina confirmed his suspicion by asking for more wine, but Ashto refused outright. The persistent elf kept pleading for at least one bottle, but Ashto reminded her about the village's ration system. He scolded her for drinking her entire month's share on the same day she received it. He even questioned how she managed to finish a month's supply of wine in just one day. Elmina simply explained that the wine and whiskey were too delicious to resist, and once she started, she couldn't stop. Her behavior reminded Ashto of the reason she was exiled from her village, stealing the village head's secret stash of alcohol. Even so, Ashto stood firm, refusing to give her more since it would be unfair to everyone else. Elmina tried to persuade him by claiming their friendship should make her an exception. She even made a suggestive offer, but Ashto was disturbed and rejected her outright. Ashto told Elmina to wait until her next payday like everyone else. However, Elmina clung to him, exclaiming that she couldn't live without chocolate and wine. Curious, Ashto asked what chocolate was. Elmina explained it was the delicious treat sold at Dimitri's store. Ashto recalled hearing about it before. It was a sweet snack made from the Keiko seeds grown near Beelzebub. He also remembered Lizabelle telling him about other popular items at the store, and he had once treated someone with a bottle of celestial peach wine. Elmina complained that everyone else had already tasted the chocolate. Ashto suggested she trade something with the store instead. He mentioned how other High Elves had carved protective charms from wood to barter. Elmina admitted she had already tried that and showed him the wooden charm she had made. Dimitri had called it a cursed item and refused to accept it. After seeing the eerie-looking charm, Ashto couldn't help but agree with Dimitri. Frustrated, Elmina lamented her inability to eat chocolate or even drink wine to ease her disappointment. At that moment, Ashto noticed Mua and a group of kids from the Demon Hound clan approaching, all in high spirits. Curious, he asked if something had happened. Mua happily revealed that they had traded for some chocolate. Elmina's scream of despair echoed through the streets as she demanded to know what the kids had given Dimitri in exchange. Ashto warned her not to intimidate them. The kids explained they had gathered fruits from the forest with help from the High Pixies. Since they had collected so much, Dimitri rewarded them with plenty of chocolate. Ashto praised the children for their hard work. Mua added that they planned to share the chocolate with Senti and King Sheep. Elmina listened quietly as Ashto chatted with the kids, who soon left to play with their friends. Once they were gone, she grumbled about how even a centipede and a sheep would get to taste chocolate before she did. Ashto reminded Elmina of his earlier advice and started to leave, but she stopped him, claiming she could also do something simple like the kids had. Ashto wished her luck and tried to walk away, but Elmina grabbed his coat and insisted he accompany her. Annoyed, Ashto told her to handle it on her own. In the end, Ashto accompanied Elmina to the forest. He moved trees aside to create a trail as she had requested, though he wondered about the purpose. Elmina mentioned they might discover something interesting in areas people had not explored. Ashto pointed out that fruit wouldn't grow in places without sunlight, but Elmina dismissed his complaints and urged him to follow her. Elmina began searching through nearby bushes, while Ashto questioned whether he could spot anything in the forest that even a high elf couldn't. As he watched, he noticed movement on a nearby tree branch. Shortly after, Elmina called out to him, revealing her find, a black pomegranate, a rare fruit that was hardly ever seen, even in the High Elven village. Just as Ashto felt happy for her discovery, a slime suddenly engulfed Elmina. He was shocked to see her clothes dissolving, and it became clear that she was unable to breathe. Fearful that it might be a man-eating slime, Ashto hurriedly consulted Murcielago's book. To his relief, the book identified the creature as a clothes-eating slime, weak to fire magic. It also mentioned that the slime's core was a rare and valuable material. Elmina was already suffocating, but Ashto couldn't use fire magic. Desperate, he searched the book for another solution to save her. A page then appeared showing the Tree of Death. Shella, the spirit connected to the book, explained that the tree could end the world, erasing all existence except for the caster and Murcielago. She joked about Ashto and herself becoming the Adam and Eve of a new world. Frustrated, Ashto slammed the book to the ground and angrily shouted about the ridiculous jokes in such a dire situation. While Ashto read the book, Elmina's clothes dissolved completely, leaving her in only her underwear made from king sheep's wool. Ashto flipped through more pages and discovered the Thirsty Root spell, which summoned a root that could absorb anything after reciting an embarrassingly childish chant. With no other option, Ashto reluctantly recited the chant. A thirsty root appeared, quickly dissolving the slime and freeing Elmina. Ashto rushed to her side, shaking her to wake her up, but she wasn't breathing. Shella suggested that the slime's mucus had blocked her airways, and advised performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Shocked, Ashto hesitated, but Shella reminded him to focus on saving Elmina's life. Despite his reluctance, Shella gave firm instructions, leaving Ashto no choice but to hold Elmina's face and open her mouth. In a teasing tone, Shella urged him to hurry. Just as Ashto's lips were about to meet Elmina's, the High Elf suddenly coughed up the slime's mucus, spraying it all over his face. She complained about the bitterness of the slime and then noticed Shella standing nearby. While Shella expressed relief at Elmina's recovery, her expression hinted at amusement. Elmina asked what type of slime had attacked her, remarking that she had almost died. It was then that she realized she was wearing nothing but her tattered underwear. Ashto quickly averted his gaze while Shella remarked on how fortunate it was that Elmina had been freed before losing all her clothes. Elmina's scream and the sound of a sharp slap soon echoed through the forest. Ashto's cheeks throbbed in pain. Elmina, now wrapped in Ashto's coat, blurted out that she couldn't help it. Anyone would be shocked to wake up completely naked. She also felt disappointed about losing the black pomegranate. Ashto told her it was either her clothes or her life, and she was lucky to have only lost her clothes. Then he picked up something from the remains of the slime, a colored stone. Without hesitation, he handed the slime's core to Elmina. They might have lost the black pomegranate, but the slime core was still valuable. Ashto figured it could be traded for a lot of chocolate. Elmina's face lit up. She cheered, happy to have gotten something, and thanked Ashto. Meanwhile, he wondered what had happened to Shella. As always, she had disappeared without a trace. Excited, Elmina decided to head back to the village shop to exchange the slime core for chocolate. But as she stepped forward, she felt something sharp under her foot. She winced in pain. Seeing this, Ashto offered to carry her on his back. Elmina hesitated and asked if he was sure. Ashto pointed out that she couldn't walk through the forest with bare feet. As he carried her, Elmina softly apologized for causing trouble. Ashto asked if she had said something, but she simply turned away without answering. Later, at the village shop, Lizabelle smiled when she saw the core of a cloth-eating slime. Ashto was surprised that she could identify it just by looking. Lizabelle proudly explained that her glasses were enchanted with appraisal magic. This shocked Ashto because enchanted glasses were more valuable than some royal treasures. Lizabelle casually mentioned that such items were common in Beelzebub. Considering how advanced human technology was, Ashto understood why he reacted that way. He got the feeling that she was looking down on humans but decided to just go along with it. After examining the slime core, Lizabelle confirmed that it could be traded for 200 bars of chocolate. Elmina was surprised and immediately asked to make the trade. However, Lizabelle had another offer. She had heard that Elmina loved wine and brought out a box. She was willing to trade one bottle of their store's most premium wine, the Black Blood. Elmina looked shocked. Lizabelle explained that even in Beelzebub, it was hard to get because it was difficult to produce. Holding the box, Elmina asked if she was serious. Ashto watched from the side, wondering if Elmina would choose the chocolate or the premium wine. Lizabelle asked Elmina what she had decided. Elmina chose to stick with the chocolate. Ashto was surprised. Lizabelle reminded her that she couldn't return it if she changed her mind. Elmina didn't mind and told her to hurry up. Ashto, still worried, asked if Elmina was really okay with giving up the premium wine. Elmina admitted she wanted it, but there would always be another chance. She then gave Ashto a piece of chocolate, reminding him that she had promised to share it with him. She told him to enjoy it together with her. Ashto was a bit surprised. Lizabelle watched them and noticed how they seemed to be flirting. She then warned them that eating and drinking were not allowed inside the store. Before Ashto left, Lizabelle stopped him, saying she had something to share. She told him that their representative had a request and wanted to talk to him in person. She asked if he was free the next day. Ashto wondered what Dimitri wanted to discuss. The next day at the store, Dimitri thanked Ashto for taking time out of his busy schedule. Ashto had heard that Dimitri had a request. Dimitri confirmed it and apologized for asking for favors so often. He then invited Ashto to discuss it in his sitting room and asked Lizabelle to bring some refreshments. In Dimitri's office, a dark drink sat on the table. Curious, Ashto wondered what it was. Dimitri explained that it was kaf, a common drink in Beelzebub. He said it was similar to the black tea humans drank. Ashto took a sip but immediately spat it out onto Dimitri's face. He glared at the demon, accusing him of tricking him. Dimitri told him to calm down, explaining that kaf was supposed to be that bitter at first. He assured Ashto that the taste would grow on him over time. For now, he suggested adding milk and sugar to make it easier to drink. Lizabelle added milk and sugar to Ashto's kaf. When he took another sip, he noticed the taste had improved. The bitterness was still there, but the other flavors started to stand out, making it more enjoyable. Dimitri chuckled and asked if it tasted better now. He explained that kaf could help reduce fatigue, be paired well with sweet snacks, and be perfect for staying awake during long nights of reading. Ashto realized he did feel more alert. He then asked if Dimitri was trying to promote kaf so he could get permission to grow its ingredients in the village. Dimitri denied it, but admitted he planned to sell kaf in his store. However, that wasn't the real reason he had brought it up. Dimitri suddenly turned serious. His expression darkened as he said he had a very grave request. For some reason, Ashto felt uneasy. He asked what the grave request was. Dimitri then requested permission to bring some of his people to the village to work at the store. Ashto was confused and asked if that was all. Dimitri confirmed it was. Ashto had expected something much more difficult. Dimitri stated that he would bring 4 people and they would live and work in the village permanently. He also mentioned that he had heard about Ashto's plan to open a library, which he understood was mainly for organizing and storing Ashto's large book collection. Ashto confirmed this and explained that he had been receiving frequent book deliveries from the High Elves. He recalled receiving over 20,000 books so far. Dimitri was surprised by the number. Since his people were very interested in Ashto's collection, Dimitri requested that once the library was completed, Ashto hire them as librarians. He assured Ashto that they would follow his every command without question. However, Ashto found that part unsettling and said he didn't need them to be that obedient. Still, he had been worried about how to manage the library once it was finished. Since he needed extra help, Dimitri's offer was actually beneficial. Ashto agreed to make arrangements for their living quarters. Dimitri thanked him for accepting his request. Then Ashto realized the most important question: what race were the newcomers? Dimitri revealed that they were from the Diabolos clan. He assured Ashto that they would be perfect for managing the library and would be very useful. Ashto imagined them with the same eerie smile as Dimitri and Lizabelle. He sighed, wondering if this was truly a good idea. The next day, 4 girls met Ashto and thanked him for letting them move and work in his village. They all looked the same and had similar curves and heights. Was this another addition to Ashto's harem? The girls introduced themselves as Agrat, Malat, Iseth, and Zenunim. They spoke at the same time as if they were one person. Ashto was shocked and didn't know what to say. Dimitri noticed Ashto struggling to tell them apart. He assured Ashto that he would explain how to recognize the quadruplets. Ashto was surprised. Agrat loved romance novels, Malat enjoyed biographies, Iseth liked fantasy books, and Zenunim preferred picture books. Dimitri said they could be identified by the books they carried. Ashto found this unhelpful and asked for a better way to tell them apart immediately. Dimitri thought for a moment and suggested that they wear name tags for now. He was confident that Ashto would eventually learn to recognize them. Ashto had expected Dimitri to bring unusual people, but he hadn't expected quadruplets. Dimitri then told the girls to go to Lizabelle if they needed anything. As he walked away, he asked Ashto to take care of his daughters. Ashto agreed without thinking, but then he suddenly stopped. Did Dimitri just say daughters? Several days later, the library was finally finished. It was a massive 10-story building. Each floor had enough shelves to hold over 100,000 books. It was huge, especially compared to the Royal Library of Big Baylog, which only had 30,000 books. The library also had plenty of reading spaces and even a restaurant on one floor for refreshments, creating a comfortable atmosphere. Without a doubt, it was now the largest building in the village. Ashto decided to start moving his books from his house. August asked how many books he had. Ashto answered that he had 20,000. August was shocked that the house hadn't collapsed under all that weight and didn't remember building it strong enough to handle such a load. Ashto could only sigh. Just then, the sisters arrived and told Ashto to leave the job to them. They said this would be their first task as librarians and promised to do it properly. They swore not to disappoint him. The quadruplets worked quickly, and Ashto was impressed by how neatly they organized the books by genre. After 10 days, the library was finally finished, and Elder Deekbeck came to visit. When he stepped inside, he was amazed by what he saw. Ashto welcomed him warmly. Deekbeck thanked Ashto for inviting him to the grand opening and praised the library. Ashto agreed and said he was happy with how it turned out. He also pointed out that the books Deekbeck had given him now had a proper home. Deekbeck was deeply touched. He started looking through the books and noticed they were neatly organized by genre. Overcome with emotion, he wished the elven village could learn from Ashto's dedication to caring for the books. Ashto then remembered that these books were actually written by Deekbeck himself. He asked Deekbeck to label the genres when sending more books in the future. Deekbeck agreed and mentioned that he had plenty more to share. He also planned to bring some personally next time. Ashto was excited about that. Then, Ashto realized that only the sisters had helped with sorting the books. Curious, he asked how they managed to organize them by genre. The girls cheerfully explained that it was simple. They had read every single one, all 20,000 of them. After the library opened, Ashto returned home and began mixing something while following a book as a guide. He combined 3 types of herbs that could boost healing effects and add a detoxifying property. In the end, he created a potion that was better than any sold in the market. This was all possible thanks to the sisters who had organized the books for him. Now he could easily find texts about herbalism and make great progress in his research. Silmeria suddenly entered his office carrying a cup of tea. Ashto thanked her and took a sip, immediately noticing a new flavor. Silmeria confirmed it and asked if he liked it. Ashto said it tasted quite good. Recently, the Silver Cat clan had been focusing some of their efforts on tea. Ashto found it interesting that even using the same tea leaves, changing the preparation process could create completely different flavors. He then remembered reading a chapter about tea in one of the herbalism books. Silmeria asked if that was true, and Ashto invited her to visit the library with him later. She happily agreed. Ashto could tell how excited she was just by the way her ears moved. He mentioned that since they had gone through all the trouble of building the library, they might as well enjoy it by reading there. Shella suddenly appeared at the window, reporting an emergency. Ashto, as usual, was startled by her sudden entrance but quickly asked what had happened. Shella mentioned that it was about the 2 people behind her. When Ashto looked, he was shocked to see 2 horned individuals covered in blood with deep wounds on their backs and arms. Shella explained that they had been attacked by gargoyles. Ashto quickly decided to treat them and asked Silmeria to bring hot water. He dragged the injured girls into his room and started preparing for their treatment. As he examined them, he noticed their horns and realized they were draconians. The girl's face seemed familiar, and Ashto felt like he had seen her somewhere before. However, he pushed the thought aside, knowing that treating their wounds was the priority. Silmeria soon returned with a tub of hot water. Ashto thanked her and immediately soaked some towels. He carefully cleaned their wounds, causing the girl to groan in pain. He told her to hold on and be patient for a little longer. Ashto did his best to treat them. He cleaned their wounds, applied medicine, and covered them with bandages to finish treating the surface injuries. Then he made a special medicine by mixing the herb from earlier with powdered magic beast liver. He dissolved it in hot water and used it as a salve to help their wounds heal faster. Shella praised his work, but Ashto pointed out that the 2 had lost too much blood, so he couldn't let his guard down. When he looked at the Draconians again, the girl seemed familiar. He remembered that most Draconians lived on Dragon Road. A few years ago, an envoy from Dragon Road had visited Big Baylog, but he recalled them being male. However, he also remembered seeing 2 girls back then. The envoy had included a pair of sisters from the royal family. Shella then told him she was going somewhere and asked him to take care of the 2. Once the Emerald Dragon left, Ashto focused on the Draconians again. The memories became clearer, and he finally recognized the sisters from back then. He asked if she was Lorelei. In Dragon Road's castle, the king knelt on the floor crying. He shouted the names of Lorelei and Clarabelle. A woman nearby told him to calm down and asked if he really needed to yell like that. The king sobbed as he explained that the girls were gone. They had only gone out for a walk but hadn't returned. He was worried because they had never been this late before. The woman agreed. Clarabelle might not be too surprising, but Lorelei would never stay out without contacting them. Something must have happened. She wondered if they had somehow wandered into the forest of Oberstein. The king gasped, saying Lorelei knew better than anyone how dangerous that forest was. It was filled with monsters. He kept crying on the floor. The woman then decided to send more search parties to look in Oberstein. The king was relieved and called out to the girls, promising to come for them. The woman, however, called him foolish and told him to stay behind. This man Garland was the king of Dragon Road. A king couldn't abandon his kingdom. Garland was still worried, but the woman reminded him that she was the queen, and like him, a dragon. She confidently swore that she wouldn't let the monsters get the best of her. Just then, someone interrupted them. There was no need to search. The queen stiffened as she recognized the flat voice of someone who came and went as they pleased. Shella had already taken care of their daughters. The royal couple was surprised to see Shella. Shella felt happy to see that Almeria and Garland had grown up. Almeria, feeling flustered, tried to continue the greetings but quickly asked about their daughters. She wanted to know what Shella meant by taking care of them. Garland suddenly shouted and begged Shella to spare his daughters' lives. In response, Shella calmly said that if he wanted them back, he should serve her some good tea. Almeria, confused, told them to stop joking. Shella then dropped the act and admitted that their daughters had run into a small accident. Garland was shocked, but Shella reassured them that the girls were safe and staying in a certain village. Almeria immediately asked where the village was, but Shella told her to relax. She said she would explain everything over a nice cup of tea. The royal couple silently looked at each other, unsure of what to say. Meanwhile, in Ashto's house, Lorelai slowly opened her eyes. She looked around and asked where she was. Just then, Ashto walked into the room, relieved to see her awake. Lorelai, still confused, asked if she was really alive. She then panicked and started looking for Clarabelle. Ashto told her to calm down, explaining that her sister was resting in the next bed. He assured her that he had already treated their wounds and that they would be fine after some rest. Lorelai sighed in relief. Ashto, now certain of her identity after hearing Clarabelle's name, hesitated for a moment. He turned his face away and covered his eyes. Lorelai confirmed that she was indeed Lorelai, then asked who Ashto was. Instead of answering, Ashto asked if they were the same sisters who had once visited Estrella Manor, the ones who had gone to see the royal greenhouse. Lorelai, surprised, asked if he was really Ashto. She doubted it since they were currently in Oberstein. Ashto told her to listen carefully because he had a long story to tell. However, Lorelai noticed that he was still looking away and covering his face. She asked why, but Ashto didn't answer. That's when she realized it herself. After things calmed down, Ashto served some drinks. Lorelai said the drink smelled wonderful. Ashto explained that it was a medicine that helped restore strength and blood. Lorelai said it tasted surprisingly good for a medicine. She looked at Ashto again and remarked that she barely recognized him. Ashto agreed, saying it had been 5 years since then. Back then, Ashto was crushed when he found out his natural talent was nature magic. He had worked hard to prove himself worthy of being part of a ruling family. Even after studying medicine under the royal physician and becoming a qualified apothecary, he still went to the royal greenhouse every day to learn more. Looking back, that was all he knew how to do. But one day, 2 sisters from Dragon Road on their way to Big Baylog visited. Their names were Lorelai and Clarabelle. Lorelai remembered being drawn in by the scent of sweet herbs and feeling shocked by what she had found. She had been surprised to see a boy her age studying medicinal plants so seriously, writing detailed notes on parchment. When she learned he was the second son of the Estrella family, she could hardly believe he belonged to a royal family of combat sorcerers. Ashto had only responded with a dry laugh. Back then, Lorelai often saw him looking stressed. But now, he seemed to be doing well. Ashto admitted that a lot had happened since those days. When Lorelai asked him to share, he hesitated and instead told her to rest. Then he asked why she and her sister had come to Oberstein. Lorelai explained that at first they had only planned to visit the cliffs near the kingdom. They took their dragon forms and flew from one watering hole to another, gathering fruit and other things. Ashto recalled that only the draconian royal bloodline had the ability to transform into dragons. After some time, the sisters decided to fly over Oberstein to enjoy the view. However, they had been careless and were attacked from the ground. Clarabelle's wing was hit and she fell from the sky. Lorelai rushed to protect her from a gargoyle, believing they would not survive. But just in time, Shella appeared and saved them. Even Ashto found the incident unfortunate. Lorelai blamed herself for not being more careful, but Ashto told her not to. He patted her head and reminded her that in the end, they had both survived. For now, he told her to rest. Crying, Lorelai thanked him. But before that, he asked her to help dress Clarabelle since his maid was not around. Clarabelle woke up and Lorelai called her name with a worried voice. At first, Clarabelle felt confused, but then she snapped out of her daze and hugged her older sister. The 2 girls cried as they held each other. Lorelai asked how she was feeling and Clarabelle said her back hurt a little. However, she reassured her sister that she would be fine once her wings healed. Lorelai then reminded her to thank Shella and Ashto later. Just then, Ashto entered the room, relieved to see Clarabelle awake. Clarabelle froze as she stared at him. Confused, she asked if they were in Big Baylog since Ashto was there. She clearly remembered being in Oberstein. Lorelai told her to calm down so she wouldn't reopen her wounds. Meanwhile, Ashto recognized the loud, echoing voice he had heard before. After a few days, Ashto finally took off the bandages from the Dragon Sisters. They were mostly healed, but he told them to stay in the village for 2 or 3 more days to rest. Lorelai agreed, saying she would trust Ashto if that was what he thought was best. Clarabelle, feeling curious, asked if the village they were in was something he had built. Ashto said he didn't build all of it. Then Clarabelle asked him to show her around. Lorelai also said she wanted to see Ashto's village. Ashto said Lorelai would be fine walking around, but he was worried about Clarabelle. especially because of her wings. Clarabelle told him not to worry and said it felt like losing a baby tooth. Something that just happens. Ashto wasn't sure if it was really that simple, but Clarabelle grabbed his hand and pulled him along. In the end, Ashto agreed to show both of them around the village. As soon as they stepped outside, the sisters were amazed by how calm and beautiful the place felt. They couldn't believe such a nice village had been built in Oberstein, which was known as an empty and wild land. Ashto said it could be called a real village now, thanks to the people living there. He explained that the older dwarves were the ones who designed the buildings, and they were very careful about making sure everything was built well. Lorelei had her own ideas about dwarves, but after seeing the houses, she was surprised by how skilled they were. Then she pointed to the tiny houses in the trees and asked if they were birdhouses. Before Ashto could answer, a fairy showed up and asked if Ashto was taking a walk with his friends. Clarabelle got super excited when she saw the fairy. She couldn't believe fairies were real and started chasing after her. The fairy got upset and Lorelei quickly told her sister not to be rude. Still, Lorelei was also shocked that fairies actually existed. Ashto explained that they were a race called flower fairies. Lorelei then understood that the small houses in the trees belonged to them. Ashto said there were about 30 fairies living in the village. He also shared that they collected nectar from the forest and made a special kind of syrup. Clarabelle got excited again and wanted to try some. She went up to the fairy and asked for it, but the fairy shouted that she wouldn't give anything to someone who tried to grab her. Clarabelle quickly said sorry. Next, the group went to the clothing workshop. Ashto explained that the demon hounds were the ones who made clothes, bags, and other accessories. Lorelei was surprised because she had never seen how clothes were made before. While they were looking around, Mayuri showed up. She greeted the dragon sisters and asked if they were feeling better. Lorelei told her she was fine now, and Mayuri was happy to hear it. Ashto asked why Mayuri was at the workshop. She said she was thinking of new designs and believed she could get better ideas by visiting the workshop instead of working alone at home. Ashto said he looked forward to seeing what she would create. Then Clarabelle gave them a sharp look and asked Ashto if he was dating Mayuri. Mayuri turned red and Lorelei told Clarabelle to stop. The tour went on and the sisters saw people from many different races working together and smiling. Now that they looked more closely, Lorelei noticed that everyone came from rare and amazing races. Elder dwarves and silver catfolk were already uncommon in Dragon Road, but Lorelei was even more surprised to see flower fairies, demon hounds, demon ogres, and salamanders all living and working side by side. Ashto said it could be surprising at first. Lorelei then pointed at what looked like a stuffed animal lying on the ground. She asked if there was going to be a festival. Ashto told her it wasn't a toy, it was Panta, who belonged to the Black Mole race. Lorelei was shocked. After that, they went to the farmland. Lorelei was amazed at how big it was. Ashto explained that farming was the village's main business. They had vineyards, an orchard, and wheat fields. He also showed them a brewery and said that everyone worked hard on it because they all loved to drink. He added that they had cotton fields for making textiles and even a ranch. Lorelei was surprised by how well the village had grown. Ashto said that anything they didn't have they traded for with the High Elves and Black Moles. If something was missing, they would barter with nearby stores to get it. Lorelei was surprised to learn they even had shops and wondered how they were managed. Ashto remembered Dimitri's smile and told her they would talk about the shop later. Then he offered to show them the bathhouse and library next. Suddenly, Wood showed up holding a basket of grapes. Ashto asked if he was helping out on the farm. Clarabelle thought Wood looked cute and asked what kind of creature he was. Ashto said Wood was a Trent and explained that he had created him with magic, kind of like a magical helper. Lorelei also thought the magical helper was cute. Clarabelle then joked that Ashto must be Wood's mom. Ashto said it would make more sense to call him the father. Lorelei smiled and said Ashto's village seemed like a wonderful place. She noticed how happy everyone looked and told Ashto he should be proud for making such a peaceful home in Oberstein. Ashto replied that it was only possible because everyone worked together. Lorelei decided she wanted to support the village too, and when she got home she would talk to her father about it. Clarabelle asked if they were leaving already. She got upset and said she wanted to stay with Ashto and the others a little longer. Lorelei reminded her sister that their parents might worry if they didn't go back at least once. Ashto offered to go with them and said that once they had permission they could come back any time using a safer path. Just then, someone playfully told them not to be sad. Shella appeared, sitting on Senti's head. She thanked the giant centipede for the ride and joked that maybe it could ride on Dragon Road next time. Ashto was shocked to hear they had been to Dragon Road. Shella explained that the girl's father had been very worried, so she let him know they were okay. She then pulled out a letter and gave it to the sisters and another one to Ashto. The sisters were surprised and happy to read that their father had already given them permission to stay longer. They excitedly told Ashto about it. Ashto looked at his own letter and saw that it asked him to take care of the girls. It also said that as long as Shella gave her approval, everything was fine. Ashto asked Shella about her connection to Dragon Road, but by then, the Emerald Dragon had already vanished. Clarabelle was excited and looked forward to being under Ashto's care. Ashto noticed there was a second page in the letter he received. It had a big warning saying the village would be burned down if anything happened to the sisters. But that part was crossed out, and the next line said the king was only joking. Ashto started sweating nervously. Ashto led the sisters to the library and explained that it had just been built, so many of the bookshelves were still empty. The girls were amazed by how the library looked inside. The shelves that already had books were shiny and neat. Lorelei, who loved books, opened her eyes wide and smiled big as she said the library was huge and amazing. That made Ashto remember how Lorelei used to visit the library almost every day whenever she came to Big Baylog. While they were looking around, one of the librarians saw them and asked if they were searching for a certain book. Ashto guessed that she was a Grat, but she said he was wrong. Another librarian showed up and Ashto guessed she was Aishith, but again, he was wrong. Clarabelle joked that maybe she just saw one person split into two. Then someone nearby told the two girls, who really were Agrat and Aishith, to stop playing around with the mayor. Two more sisters appeared and scolded them for not wearing name tags. Clarabelle got nervous, seeing more and more of them. Ashto told her to stay calm and explained that the girls were actually quadruplets. Agrat and Aishith were a bit disappointed that their joke didn't last long. They only wanted to have a bit of fun. The two girls then greeted Ashto and said he got their names right. Clarabelle ran to tell her sister about the quadruplets, but Lorelei was already lost in a book. She snapped out of it and asked Ashto if they would be staying in the village for a while. Ashto told her they were staying to rest and recover. Lorelei said it would be boring to do nothing every day, so she had a request. She wanted to work at the library. Ashto didn't mind. Lorelei started to beg, not realizing he had already said yes. Ashto asked why she was surprised, then looked at the quadruplets and understood the reason. But the librarians thought it was great to have someone new and even asked Lorelei to become their head librarian. The decision was made. The librarian sisters stood in a line, bowed, and officially welcomed Lorelei as their new head librarian. Lorelei felt happy to be called that. She told the girls she was excited to work with them and asked how the books were arranged. Clarabelle said there was no stopping her sister now, and Ashto agreed. They could both feel Lorelei's excitement and the energy from the librarians too. Lorelei was chosen to be a librarian the moment she arrived in the village. The villagers liked her right away, mostly because she looked good in a robe. That's when Ashto realized how accepting his people were. No matter who showed up, they always welcomed them. A few weeks later, Ashto met someone who called him Uncle. It turned out to be Glad. Ashto thought it was strange to have any business with him, but Glad said he had a special request. Glad asked if the salamanders could build a molting hut. Ashto didn't know what that was, so Glad decided to explain. First, Ashto told him to stop bowing so much. Then Glad explained that salamanders shed their skin a few times a year, around 3 to 4 times, no matter if they were male or female. Ashto realized they were like dragons or other reptiles. But then Glad said there was a problem. For salamanders, molting was like being seen completely naked, which made it very embarrassing. On top of that, their bodies gave off a lot of heat during the process. If anything around them could burn, it would catch fire right away. So staying at home or out in the woods wasn't safe. That's why they needed brick huts. Bricks wouldn't catch fire easily. Ashto gave them permission and told Glad they could use any land they wanted, no matter how big. Glad was thankful and said they would pick a spot at the edge of the village. Ashto then wondered if the elder dwarves were helping build the huts. But Glad said the salamanders would build them by themselves because they didn't want to bother August or the other dwarves. Ashto thought about it. He felt the salamanders were a bit too serious about doing things on their own. The other races in the village were relaxed and easygoing, so the salamanders stood out. Ashto understood that they cared a lot about ranks and respect. But in his village, he wanted everyone to be treated the same. He asked when the next molting season would be. Glad said some salamanders would start molting in just a week. Hearing that, Ashto decided to ask the elder dwarves to help build the huts quickly. Glad was surprised and said they didn't want to trouble anyone. But Ashto explained that it was normal to help build things that everyone in the village needed. If one group was having a hard time, the others should help. Glad tried to come up with another excuse. That's when Ashto asked what would happen if August and the others found out that the salamanders had built something without telling them. Glad suddenly imagined a huge storm with August in the middle of it. If the elder dwarves saw something poorly built, they would explode in anger. Realizing his mistake, Glad thanked Ashto and quickly ran off to bow and ask the elder dwarves for help. In the end, Ashto had used the idea of hierarchy to scare Glad into doing the right thing. The brick huts were finished before anyone even realized it, just like Ashto had expected. Glad didn't know how to thank them enough, and August told him not to wait until the last minute next time. Ashto also thought the huts looked pretty good. August said the 2 huts in the front were for molting, and the one in the back was for laying eggs. He told Glad to bring the woman over soon since the egg laying would happen before the molting. Glad thanked him, but Ashto was confused and didn't understand what they were talking about. He asked what they meant by egg laying. August was surprised Glad hadn't explained it. Glad apologized and said it was something personal and he planned to tell Ashto after the eggs were born. Later, Ashto went to his garden and saw Mandrake standing there, pouting. He asked what was wrong, but she didn't say anything and just walked away. Ashto noticed she had been in a bad mood lately and he kind of understood why. He told Wood it was time to go back and have some snacks. Wood said he wanted donuts. Ashto guessed that Mandrake's mood had to do with something popular in the village lately: special donuts made with all-round leaves. When those brewed leaves were mixed with normal ingredients, they made the donuts taste extra sweet and really good. These donuts had become very popular, especially with High Elves, Silver Catfolk, and Demon Hounds. Even salamanders and elder dwarves liked eating them. Ashto happily invited Mandrake to come back home with him, but she stayed quiet and walked away again. Basically, Mandrake was jealous. Only all-round leaves were being used in the donuts. Mandrake's leaves weren't sweet, so they couldn't be used for desserts. They were a bit spicy and bitter, unlike the sweet and sour all-round leaves. Even all-round was starting to get worried. Ashto told her not to worry too much and said Mandrake would feel better soon. For now, he had to get the ingredients for something ready for the next day. The next morning, Mandrake was still feeling down. Then, Ashto called her and asked for her help. He wanted her to come to the kitchen. When Mandrake peeked inside, she saw a bunch of vegetables and herbs on the table. Ashto said he was trying to figure out how to cook mandrake leaves. Since it was just the two of them at home, he asked Mandrake to help him cook. That made her happy, and she gave him a hug. First they had to cut the vegetables, but Ashto wasn't good at using knives. Mandrake offered to do it. Ashto brought her a chair so she could reach the table. She focused as she chopped the vegetables, and Ashto said she was better at it than he was. Mandrake said she used to help out a lot at Miyuti's place. Ashto thought she was really good at it. While Mandrake was cutting the vegetables, Ashto started frying some garlic and mandrake leaves they had just picked. The smell was already delicious. When Mandrake finished chopping, Ashto praised her again. Then he checked Shella's book to see what to do next. He saw that the next step was to cook the rest of the spices in a separate pan, making sure they didn't burn. After that, he had to add onions and cook them for a little while, then pour in some water. Next, he needed to add the vegetables, meat, garlic, and the fried mandrake leaves and let everything simmer. Ashto followed the steps in the book, but he still wondered if it was really that simple. Just then, he smelled something coming from the pot. He wasn't sure what it was, but the scent made him super hungry. Even Mandrake was already drooling. After a while, the soup finished cooking and was placed on the table. Ashto was surprised and invited Mandrake to eat with him. He took a bite and said it was really spicy, but also really tasty. He felt happy that the dish turned out well. Mandrake looked pleased too. Ashto thought the mix of meat, vegetables, and spicy soup made a great flavor. He also liked the donuts, but he never thought an ingredient used for elixirs could make such an amazing soup. Soon the others came to visit Ashto. His little sister asked what smelled so good. Miyuti said it was making her very hungry. Sherry asked what her big brother had cooked. Ashto was happy they made it back just in time. He told them he made a special soup curry using mandrake leaves. He asked them to try it because it was really tasty. The girls served themselves and also found the soup spicy and delicious. Miyuti said she couldn't stop eating. Silmeria quickly asked Ashto for the recipe because it tasted so good. When Mandrake saw everyone enjoying the food, she smiled too. One day, Ashto received a report from Balgildo. Balgildo had taken a different hunting path and found a spring. At first, he thought it was a lake, but it turned out to be a spring, and it was much bigger than any he had ever seen before. Ashto thought it would be a good idea to check it out. Balgildo mentioned that there were fish in the water and suggested they go fishing together. Ashto agreed. Sherry heard about it and got excited, craving fish. Miyuti also got excited and decided to make a lunchbox for everyone. Elmira suggested they bring fishing rods, which they could buy from Dimitri's shop. The Dragon Sisters were also excited and wanted to swim. Others wanted to come along to see the spring too. It seemed like almost everyone wanted to join. However, Ashto realized they couldn't bring everyone, as they were only planning a small trip to check things out. Just then, Panda spoke up. He said he knew about the spring because he had passed by it on his way to Ashto's village. He mentioned it was beautiful and the water tasted delicious. Ashto asked if there were any dangers around. Panta assured him that there weren't many monsters fighting over the water. Since Ashto liked fishing too, he hoped it would be a peaceful place where everyone could relax. He then asked Panta to guide them there. In the end, the group became pretty large. Since Panta had small legs and couldn't keep up, he offered to be carried. Miyuti quietly looked at them and showed with her face that she also wanted to carry Panta. Meanwhile, the children were happily humming as they walked. Ashto was glad they were having fun, especially since it was their first time leaving the village with so many people. Knowing that more children would be born in the village soon, Ashto decided to make sure the village's surrounding area was safe. Elmina asked Lorelei if she had ever gone fishing. Lorelei said she had never tried it because if she wanted fish she could just dive into the water and swallow them whole. Elmina told her not to do that today. Ashto, listening to them, seemed unsure. Elmina said fishing was fun and offered to lend her fishing gear. Lorelei asked Elmina to teach her everything. Ashto thought it would be historic to see a high elf and a dragonkin fishing together. Ashto then asked Ponta how far the spring was. Ponta said it took him 2 hours to get there, but since Ashto had longer legs, they might get there faster. Ashto figured it would be about an hour's walk. Since everyone was enjoying the walk, he wasn't worried that they would get tired. An hour later, the group reached the spring. The children were the first to greet it and were amazed by the view. Everyone urged the tired Ashto to hurry up. Ashto hadn't thought about Ponta's wait during the walk. Elmina complained that Ashto didn't have enough stamina. When Ashto saw the spring, he agreed it was beautiful. The spring, he remembered, was always covered in algae and smelled bad no matter how much it was cleaned. But here the water and air were fresh and clear, making the place feel comfortable. Clarabelle wanted to change and play, but Lorelei stopped her. She warned that something might be in the water and told her she could get eaten. Clarabelle got scared. Lorelei also mentioned how their mother had told her about past accidents, so no one could dive in until it was safe. Clarabelle listened to her. The group spent some time at the spring. Elmina and Lorelei went fishing. The kids played in the shallow water. The demon ogres kept an eye on the area. Ashto saw how peaceful everything was. Mayuri then called everyone over for lunch. Elmina approached Ashto and told him there was a small island in the spring. Ashto was confused. It was true, there was a small island in the middle of the spring, but it was far away. Ashto wondered what might be there. His curiosity was stronger than his need for peace and safety. Phil offered to fly over and check the island, but Ashto asked her to wait. Since they were already there, he suggested they all check it out together. He then proposed using a boat. The spring was big, so he thought a large boat would be good for sightseeing. Mayuri somehow agreed to the idea. Ashto asked Balgildo about the area around the spring, and the demon ogre confirmed there was no danger. Ashto decided to ask August and the others to build a boat. Once it was ready, they would explore the island. Mayuri noticed Ashto seemed strangely excited. Ashto then warned Phil not to go to the island alone before the boat was ready. Phil said she wanted to go with Ashto anyway. Mayuri mentioned she had ridden a small boat before, but this would be her first time on a big boat. Ashto reminded them their country was landlocked. For now, he suggested going back to the village to start planning the boat. Suddenly, the water behind Ashto started to move strangely. He heard a voice calling for help from the water. Ashto turned around, but no one was there. He wondered if he had just imagined it. Ashto quickly went to the dwarves to ask if they could make a pleasure boat. He told them that the lake was much larger than he had expected, with several small islands he wanted to explore. He imagined building a ship that could carry 10 to 20 people. However, the dwarves said it was impossible and clearly told him they could not help. They explained that they had never lived near the sea or any large body of water, so they had never learned how to build boats. They admitted they didn't know the details or techniques for making one. The dwarves could see how excited Ashto was, and they wished they could help, but they apologized again. Ashto told them it was fine. They added that they might be able to make something the size of a canoe, and asked him to let them know if that would be enough. Ashto walked away feeling disappointed. He doubted anyone else in the village could build a proper boat if even the elder dwarves could not. While he was thinking about it, Dimitri suddenly appeared behind him, but Ashto ignored him and kept talking to himself about using canoes instead. He hoped the others would not be too upset with the bad news. Dimitri tried to get his attention by coughing, but he ended up choking and coughing harder until Ashto finally noticed him. Concerned, Ashto asked if he was okay. Dimitri told him he should at least say something to show he noticed him before he choked himself. Ashto apologized, saying he only realized he was there after hearing him cough. He was even surprised Dimitri was in the village at all. Dimitri said he had just arrived and had overheard Ashto's talk with the dwarves. He asked if Ashto was really trying to get a boat, since he had learned that even the elder dwarves could not make the kind the mayor wanted. Ashto confirmed it, though he looked a bit annoyed that Dimitri had been eavesdropping. Dimitri then offered to arrange the boats himself. Surprised, Ashto asked if Dimitri's shop also sold boats. Dimitri proudly said there was nothing a devil salesman could not find for the right price. He explained that a pleasure boat of that size would be expensive, but he could give a discount if Ashto agreed to pay 1,000 bottles of celestial wine. Ashto immediately refused. Dimitri told him to think about it, but Ashto said 1,000 bottles were far too much. Dimitri even offered to let him pay in installments. Yet Ashto said the problem was not about the payment method. Dimitri sighed, realizing his chance to sell celestial wine in Beelzebub for a high price had just vanished. Ashto began to wonder if a pleasure boat was truly that costly. Then he thought of an idea and told Dimitri he could not do 1,000 bottles but could manage 10. Hearing that, Dimitri told him to ask the dwarves to make a canoe in exchange for those 10 bottles. Ashto shook his head and said to forget about the boat since he already had something else in mind. Soon after, Ashto went to meet the elder dwarves carrying a few blueprints with him. He said he got them from Dimitri and showed several designs for a craft that could carry 20 people. He also brought a small model to help them picture what the finished boat would look like. Knowing how proud the dwarves were of their skills, he believed that showing them some diagrams and a model might convince them to take on the project. The dwarves carefully studied the blueprints and remembered how the Diabolos clan was famous for building ships. They quickly recognized designs for sailboats, ships with cabins, and gunboats, but they focused on finding one that would work best as a pleasure boat. After some discussion, August explained that they would build a ship for the mayor. It would be their first time doing so, but with the plans and model, they felt confident it could be done. Ashto thanked them deeply. The dwarves were excited to prove that even old craftsmen like them could still learn something new. With that, the construction of the pleasure boat began. As the work continued, Dimitri came by for a visit. Ashto thanked him for providing the blueprints, but Dimitri said it was nothing compared to 10 bottles of celestial wine. Phil soon appeared, amazed by the size of the ship's frame. She wondered if they would all be able to ride it once it was finished, and Ashto confirmed they would take a tour together. Phil was glad everyone was included, though she couldn't help but point out the strange man standing behind Ashto. Dimitri looked offended, and Ashto admitted she had a point, wondering if he should really bring Dimitri along. Dimitri complained that even the mayor was teasing him now, saying he hadn't even met Phil before. The fairy simply said she just didn't like him. Putting that aside, Dimitri remarked that building a ship of this size would be more complicated than the blueprints suggested. He offered to bring in professional shipbuilders from Beelzebub if they ran into any problems, though he could already tell the dwarves were handling things well on their own. He was impressed by how quickly they understood everything just from the diagrams. Ashto felt proud seeing how skilled the elder dwarves were. Dimitri still asked to join them on the ship once it was done, and Ashto said he understood, assuring him he was only joking earlier. 20 days later, the ship was finally completed. August said that shipbuilding turned out to be quite enjoyable. Ashto was surprised by how large it was. He was told that a ship of this size usually required 100 workers from the Diabolos clan to finish, yet a few elder dwarves managed to complete it in record time. Ashto stood there amazed by the sight of the town's very first ship. Now that the ship was finally ready, Ashto had planned to take it out on the lake right away. However, many of the town's residents wanted to come along. Sadly, Dimitri could not join them because of an urgent business meeting. Ashto then asked if Balgildo and Diamdo could really carry the huge ship by themselves. The ogres said it would not be a problem and easily lifted the massive ship. They even mentioned that one of them alone could carry it without trouble. The others were excited to explore the island and swim in the lake. Elmina and Sherry were thrilled to go fishing and brought their own gear. With everyone prepared, Ashto announced that it was time to set off. They soon reached the lake, which was so large that they could not see the far shore. Diamdo asked what he should do before putting the ship in the water, but August simply told him to toss it in. The ogres threw the ship, and it landed with a huge splash. The salamanders quickly formed a wall to block the water, keeping Ashto and Mayuri dry. They thanked the salamanders, who replied that it was no big deal. Ashto was amazed to see the ship floating so well, but wondered how they could get aboard. August told him not to worry, which was exactly why he had come along. He then asked the salamanders to cut some wood so they could build a small dock. He said it would be ready within an hour. Ashto was impressed by his skill. Ponta cheerfully said that he might be the first black mole to ever ride a boat. Ashto told him it might just be a trial run, but Ponta was still excited. He also said he wanted to try fishing from the deck. Ashto reminded him to be careful not to fall into the water. An hour later, the dock was finally finished, and August invited everyone to board the ship. Ashto noticed that the wide deck could hold more than 20 people, with plenty of space left, even though many were already on board. August instructed the salamanders to move to their stations, just as they had practiced. When the sails were raised, everyone was amazed by the sight. Elmina remembered that Mayuri and her friends had woven those sails, and Muti mentioned that the demon hounds had helped a lot. It was the first time Ashto had heard about it. Muti explained that working with such large pieces had been hard, but also fun, and she was happy that the sails turned out well. Ashto never knew his childhood sweetheart had done something so impressive. Soon after, the ship began to move across the water. The Dragon Sisters were thrilled since it felt so different from flying or swimming. Mua said she wanted to see the view from the front, and Clarabelle followed her. Ashto reminded them to watch their steps. August then asked how far they planned to take the ship. Ashto suggested sailing toward the nearby island, at least for now. He thought they were not yet ready to explore the island itself, but reaching it would help them understand how large the lake really was. He also could not get over how clear the water looked. Even in the deep parts they could see all the way to the bottom. Wood agreed that it was beautiful, while Ponta wanted to see it too, but was too short to look over the railing. Ashto began to enjoy the calm and slow cruise while watching the water sparkle around them. He thought it would take a long time to reach the island, but then the ogres suddenly started rowing with all their strength. The ship sped across the water so fast that everyone had to hold on tightly to avoid falling. August scolded the ogres for not thinking about what might happen if they rowed too hard. Almost everyone on the deck looked seasick, and the ogres quickly apologized for not realizing how strong they were. Ashto said he was fine, but then he noticed Mua and Clarabelle standing near the front of the ship and asked if they were okay. Lorelei believed her sister was fine, but Mua was clinging to the mast like a kitten. She called out to Ashto before jumping off. He ran forward to catch her, sliding across the deck, but she landed easily on her feet. Mua happily said it was fun when the ship moved that fast. Ashto wondered if she really thought so. Meanwhile, August asked the ogres to talk and began scolding them again. Ashto watched in surprise as the two large ogres seemed to shrink in front of the short dwarf. He was impressed by August's courage to speak to them so firmly. Elmina mentioned how shocking the speed was and said it almost felt as fast as when she rode Senti. Ashto noticed that the Dragon Sisters didn't seem bothered at all. Lorelei said they were used to flying much faster, and Clarabelle even offered to give Ashto a ride someday. He politely refused for now. Everyone seemed fine except Ponta, who was curled up like a ball. Ashto suggested they take it easy and enjoy a calm cruise for the rest of the trip. As they continued through the water, Ashto suddenly heard someone calling for help. Mayuri also heard it and said it was the same voice as before. Ashto looked down into the water, wondering if it was coming from below. Suddenly, the surface began to splash and something rose out of it. The water formed the shape of a woman with her hands held together like she was praying. She pleaded with Ashto to help them, saying that if nothing was done, she and her friends would be eaten. Ashto and Mayuri stared in shock, too surprised to move. While Ashto faced a mysterious water spirit, far away in the kingdom of Big Baylog, a young master returned to a mansion. A maid welcomed him back and offered to set a place for dinner. The young master explained that he was only stopping by briefly because his father wanted to see him, and he planned to return to the palace afterward. His father hurried to the reception area and asked if it was Ludger. Angrily, he demanded to know if Ludger had anything to do with Mayuri's disappearance after his sister had run off. He demanded an explanation. Ludger said he was happy to explain and then told his father everything about why he had exiled Ashto. His father felt frustrated but eventually looked defeated. Ludger decided to leave since it seemed that was all his father wanted. His father then realized that Ludger had been acting like this ever since Sherry ran away. He always responded with exile this, exile that. His father worried about how all of this might affect the army and the families under his rule. Despite that, Ludger had carefully managed everything. He had taken over the leadership of his lands, maintained the military on his own, and handled all responsibilities smoothly. On one hand, Ludger had strengthened the family's reputation. On the other hand, he had made his own father feel like a has-been. His father thought it might be time to retire and take up something simple like gardening. The maid believed that if the family could just undo Ashto's exile, everything would return to normal. Ludger returned to the palace and praised his men for defeating the giant beasts. They had managed to protect the nearby villages without causing any deaths or injuries. As their commander, he could not have asked for a better result. He said it was their hard work that made this possible and decided to pay for their food and drinks that night. Everyone quickly gathered around him, offering their drinks as tributes. Seeing Ludger surrounded by drinks, Luna Maria remembered that she had never seen him refuse a drink in all her years as his adjutant. Hunkel said that was one reason why everyone liked him so much. He told her to look at Ludger, who was thanking each soldier even while they crowded him. There were 300 of them, and he still remembered their names, faces, and histories. Hunkel added that, because Ludger was so well liked, he must have received many marriage proposals and asked Luna Maria if she agreed. Luna Maria angrily asked what he meant. Hunkel explained that he only said it because Ludger's engagement to Luna Maria's sister, Mayuri, had fallen through. He believed many noble families would want connections to the Estrellas. Luna Maria reminded him that Ludger did not care about marriage or engagements. Hunkel agreed and noted that Ludger had hardly had any women in his life. He wondered if it would be okay to take Ludger to a brothel. Luna Maria, who was drinking at the time, spat out her drink in shock. She refused to let him take Ludger to such a shameful place. Ludger then appeared and asked what place she was talking about. Surprised, Luna Maria accidentally splashed her drink in front of her. Ludger asked if she was alright. Hunkel, now wet, told Ludger to ask him that question instead. As the celebration went on, the three friends ended up at the same table. Hunkel remembered that Ludger and Luna Maria had been like this since they were children. Everyone except Ludger could tell that Luna Maria liked him. People often told Hunkel that they were tired of it and hoped he would do something to help. He wondered how he could assist a hopelessly in-love girl and a man who only thought about work to get together. Suddenly, he remembered that Ledger had a day off starting the next day. Ledger said it was because of a royal order. He wished he could move on to his next job, but the king had heard that he had not taken a vacation in over 10 years. Hunkle said Ledger was overworking himself and asked if he had any plans for his day off. Ledger explained that things had been busy lately, and he had fallen behind in his studies, so he thought he would spend the day doing some intense basic training. Hunkle asked angrily if he was serious and said that a day off meant taking a break from work. He told Ledger that he could not think about being a military commander or the heir of a noble house during this time. He suggested that Ledger should do something a single person would enjoy. Ledger understood, but Hunkle's advice did not give him many ideas. Hunkle then asked if Ledger had gone out of town recently. Ledger said he had, of course. Doubting this answer, Hunkle asked if he knew the latest trends, new cafes, or popular restaurants. He pointed out that riding through town for work did not count. Ledger could not answer. Hunkle remembered that Luna Maria also had her day off and asked her to show Ledger around town and help him relax. Luna Maria was shocked and angry, asking why it had to be her. Hunkle said leaving Ledger alone would be troublesome because no one knew what he might do. Ledger tried to suggest a compromise, but Hunkle stopped him. He reminded them that their job was to protect the common people, and if Ledger did not understand their lives, he could not protect them properly. Ledger finally agreed and asked Luna Maria if they could spend the next day together. She blushed and agreed. Hunkle finally calmed down. Now, all that was left was for this day to bring Ledger and Luna Maria closer. The next day, Luna Maria waited in the town square in her casual dress. Ledger arrived running and apologized for making her wait, but she told him it was fine because she had just reached the place as well. He felt relieved when he heard that. He looked at her for a moment and said she also looked refreshing because he was used to seeing her in armor. He said she looked good and Luna Maria blushed. She thought it was unfair for him to say something like that without warning, but she was glad she and her maids had chosen this outfit the night before. She also told him he looked nice. When she heard it was his first vacation in 10 years, she thought he would appear in his uniform. He said he first planned to do that, but the chief stopped him and scolded him, telling him he should not wear a uniform when going out with a young lady. They soon reached the restaurant Hunkle had recommended. Ledger could not remember the last time he ate at a fancy place. Luna Maria felt the same. They had both been busy for many years. After he became a general and she became his adjutant, their schedules only grew tighter. She thought he had been working hard for a long time. As the eldest son of the noble Estrella family, he had to learn swordsmanship, magic, politics, and governance. After he joined the military, his days became even busier. Ledger then said he should have taken a break sooner and found time to visit Ashto. Luna Maria knew how much he cared for his younger siblings. She also regretted not giving her little sister Muti more attention. She hoped Muti was doing fine. She believed she was, since Sherry was with her and had a strong will. She felt sure Sherry had already met Ashto without trouble, and that they were now living a peaceful and stable life. Ledger then added that he hoped those two would send word home before adding a new member to the family. His words caught her by surprise. The two of them went to a weapon and armor shop next. The employee did not expect a famous general to visit, so he told them to take their time looking around. Ledger noticed how the items looked different from the ones made by the state blacksmiths. Luna Maria also saw a sword made of Damascus steel. She thought it might be too costly for regular soldiers, but it could be a nice gift for a unit commander. Then Ledger found a bikini armor on display. They both thought it was strange because it did not even cover the important areas. They guessed it might have some kind of enchantment. Before the employee could explain, the owner came out from the back and commented that they had good eyes for quality. He called it his finest bikini armor. He said that if Ledger was interested, he should give it to the woman with him. He added that just seeing her wear it could make him imagine all kinds of nighttime battles and that he should reward her hard work during the day with some nighttime rewards. Ledger said the idea of night battles sounded interesting. The employee got upset at his boss. He truly believed that the lack of armor panels meant it would make no noise and would be perfect for night attacks. He thought this must be the wisdom of a regular person. Ledger decided to buy it. The employee was shocked, while the owner was happy to do business with him. The employee said Ledger had no idea what it was really for and begged him to stop, but Ledger felt it was a good purchase. Luna Maria asked who he planned to give the armor to. He said he hoped she would wear it as his gift for staying with him for the day. Even though it was civilian equipment, they would still need Hunkle to approve it. She thanked him for the gift and wondered if they could even request mass production for it. The employee felt like everything was already too late. After that, while heading back, Ledger thanked Luna Maria. He said that because of her, he had a great day and learned more about the lives of common people while seeing many trendy shops. She was happy to hear that. He then offered to walk her home. She started blushing and called his name. When he turned around, their lips met. After they separated, she also thanked him for the day. He was left frozen and unable to speak. Meanwhile, Hunkle and his team received a package from the equipment shop. A note said it was bought by the general and shipped to the office. Hunkle could not believe Ludger purchased something during a date. He guessed Ludger wanted them to use it as a reference for new armor, but as he opened the box and saw what was inside, he froze with confusion. He put on a bitter smile, closed the box, walked to the window, opened it, and shouted with all his anger, asking what was wrong with the two of them. Back at the lake, Ashto asked the spirit who she was and if she needed help. The ogres then showed up and asked in a threatening way if the creature was bothering their mayor. The spirit told them to stay calm. She said she was not a monster but an undine named Mizuki. She asked them not to scare her like that. Ashto pushed the ogres aside and told Mizuki not to worry since they were only checking the lake and would not cause harm. Mizuki said she understood that much, but she wanted them to hear her plea. She said her kind might disappear at this rate and begged for help, so told her to calm down first. August said Mizuki sounded passionate, then told the salamanders to lower the anchor. Everyone gathered near the docks. Mizuki looked surprised because she saw many races in one place. There were people she had seen before and others she had never met. Ashto then remembered she had seen them during their last visit. Mizuki confirmed it and explained that almost no one came to the lake, so it was rare to meet so many visitors. She also said there was a deep hole at the bottom of the lake that connected all the way to the ocean. Sometimes visitors came from there. Ashto thought this made sense since the lake was too large to be fed only by springs. Elmina said she had not seen an undine in thousands of years. Phil said it was her first time meeting one and remembered that undines were a type of water fairy. She then introduced herself as a flower fairy. Mizuki was happy to meet another kind of fairy. Sherry asked what Mizuki needed. Mizuki remembered she had been asking them for help. She said her people could not handle a certain problem on their own. She reminded them that the lake was connected to the ocean. She said a huge magical monster came through the tunnel not long ago, and that creature had been eating the undines. At first, it only ate more than its share of the clams and fish the undines needed, so they thought it only had bad manners. But one day, instead of fish, it ate one of them. Since then, it had been attacking and eating them whenever it had a chance. Ashto then realized that the monster had developed a taste for undines. Mizuki said they needed clean water to live and it was hard for them to move to another place. Ashto assumed that this was the part she needed help with. She said many of her friends had already been eaten and she spent every day afraid that she would be eaten next. Ashto became serious and told everyone that he truly wanted to help her. August reminded him that he did not need to explain because they felt the same way. Balgildo said there was no way they could ignore her situation after hearing her story. Sherry said her ice magic could handle any aquatic monsters. The Dragon Sisters also offered their help. Ashto felt touched to see everyone support her. Mizuki thanked them, and even Ponta and Mua looked eager to help. Ashto still told them to stay put and watch the boat. The group then talked about the monster. They asked Mizuki what it looked like and how big it was. Mizuki said it looked hugged like a catfish, and its whole body was covered in slime. The slime had poison that made your body numb if touched. Ashto could imagine the creature in his mind. Mizuki cried while saying the slimy muck it made had ruined their water and made it hard to live in. Ashto told her there was no need to cry. He had never seen a giant catfish before. He hoped someone could dive down and finish it, but he guessed that was impossible. Elmina told him not to act silly because they could hardly defeat an aquatic creature in its own territory. She said that if it had been an ordinary catfish, they could have hooked it and pulled it to the surface with simple fishing. The others stared at her with doubt. Elmina wondered why they were looking at her that way. Ashto pointed out that the fish was big enough to eat undines. Mayuri added that it was far too large to catch with a fishing rod. Ashto then asked Mizuki about the size of the catfish. Mizuki moved to the front of the boat and floated out until she reached the end. She said it was about that big. The creature was nearly the same size as their 100-meter boat. Elmina felt embarrassed because of her earlier idea. Ashto hoped there was still a way to handle the situation. August then said Elmina's plan was not actually bad and only needed a few changes. He whispered his idea to Ashto, starting with reaching the small island in the center of the lake and making several preparations there. Ashto understood the idea quickly. August asked what he thought, and Ashto felt excited because these people often came up with ideas he would not have thought of on his own. With their help, he believed they could make it work. Mizuki asked if he was sure. Ashto told her not to worry and to leave everything to them. Deep below the surface, a dangerous catfish waited for its next prey with a sharp and focused glare. The catfish started to move and growled as if it were hungry. The undines saw this and began to panic while trying to escape. The catfish was already swimming above them. A mother and her son tried to get away while others urged everyone to hide inside the rocks where the catfish could not reach. This giant catfish, called a biowels, stretched more than 100 meters long. It used to live in the sea and followed the currents until it reached this lake. Since it had no predators here and plenty of food, it chose this place as its new home. The water was a little too clean for a biowels, but it did not care. Its goo spread through the lake and made it harder for the undines to breathe. It constantly released a deadly poison, a murky purple liquid that matched its skin. Just by swimming around, it changed the environment to fit its needs. It hunted creatures that became weak and slow from the poisoned water. This was how the monster survived. Before it could start feeding on the paralyzed undines, someone ordered it to stop. Mizuki came out from behind a cliff and stepped forward. She challenged the catfish and tried to make herself its target. She even tried to insult it by calling it a slimy, whiskered fish and saying she would turn it into fertilizer for Yggdrasil. The other undines finally noticed that Mizuki was the one trying to distract the creature. Mizuki forgot what she planned to say next, but she did not realize the catfish had already reached her. The undines yelled for her to run. Mizuki told them to escape while she kept its attention. As she fled, Mizuki felt its stare locked onto her. Fear crept into her, but she knew she had to stay strong. Those people had already promised to save her kind, and she needed to do her part. Mizuki was finally cornered by the catfish. She stood in front of something and felt nervous, then said the rest was up to the others. She moved quickly and dodged just before the catfish tried to swallow her. Instead of eating her, the catfish bit into something attached to chains. It was an anchor. Up on the surface, the ogres felt the strong pull and understood they had caught the catfish. Wood helped them hold the line. Ashto said they were using the anchor as the hook and Wood's arm as the rod. Now everything depended on their strength. The ogres focused and pulled harder. Wood tried his best to stay steady. With one loud shout, the ogres pulled back the chains and lifted the huge creature out of the water. The catfish only realized at that moment that two ogres had fished it up. While the catfish was still in the air, the dragon sisters appeared in their dragon forms. The older sister let the younger one act first. The younger sister gathered flames in her mouth and blasted the catfish, burning it. She felt proud when she saw the catfish falling and unable to fight back. The older sister refused to lose. Sherry also joined in and reminded them she was part of the fight. She and the older dragon gathered their ice magic and froze the falling catfish. Before the frozen creature could hit the ground like a giant popsicle, the ogres moved in for the final strike. Daimdo told Balgildo to lead the attack this time. Daimdo pulled his arm back, and Balgildo stepped on Daimdo's fist. Daimdo launched him into the air. Balgildo landed on the frozen catfish, tightened his fist, and told the creature it was out of luck as he called it the lake-defiling beast. He punched the frozen body with full force and shattered it into pieces. Ashto watched the ice shards fall. He felt a rush of excitement and shouted with all his strength. Sherry claimed her brother might have been the one who celebrated the most, even though he did not do much. Ashto claimed it was fine for him to feel a little happy. He still felt relieved that everyone worked together, especially after seeing the frozen catfish broken into pieces. Even so, he wondered if it was fine to leave the messy scene on the ground. Wood ran to Ashto. Ashto praised his work and asked if he was hurt. Wood confirmed he was fine. Ashto then told August that hardening the roots and using wood like a fishing rod had been a clever idea. August admitted he was not sure it would work. He explained that the local trees might have snapped under the weight of the catfish, so he figured wood had the best strength and durability around them. Wood had held firm against the power of both Balgildo and Diamdo as well. Ashto never expected a plantkin like wood to be this sturdy. He assumed it was because Sierra's power had buffed him. Phil called out to Ashto. Standing behind her was an emotional Mizuki. Ashto asked what was wrong and if she was hurt. Mizuki said she was fine and thanked everyone. She explained that thanks to their help, they managed to defeat the catfish. However, the lake was already polluted. Ashto assumed it came from the fluids the catfish released when they pulled it out. Mizuki said the lake was ruined, but her friends who stayed behind were safe. From now on, they would just need to look for a new home and live there. Ashto did not know how to calm the crying Undine. Sierra appeared at that moment and said a book was useful in times like this. She explained that she had been watching the whole time and thought a peaceful trip with everyone would be enjoyable. She told him to open the book and reminded him that plants did not only grow on land. Ashto told Mizuki to leave the lake to him. Mizuki felt confused and wondered what he was doing, but Ashto pointed his wand at the polluted lake. He began chanting a spell that called out to the dirty water. He used a spell called Cure Mangrove, purifying lake forest tree. His magic dropped into the water, yet nothing happened at first, which left him confused. Elmina thought he was only trying to look cool, and Ashto told her she was wrong because that was not his goal. Muti soon noticed something in the water and asked about it. They all saw a small sprout pushing up through the surface. In only a few seconds, the sprout grew into a tall tree. Everyone felt amazed as it rose above them. A huge tree stood from the water beside the lakeside, and at the same time the polluted water turned crystal clear. Ashto realized the tree was pulling in the filth and cleaning it. Everyone felt impressed, and Wood praised Ashto. Mizuki dove back into the lake and found the water completely clean. After hearing that, the younger dragon became excited, changed shape and swam under the clear water. Ashto saw the roots spreading through the lake like a forest. He understood the spell was a great success. Clarabelle peeked out of the water and admired how pretty everything looked, and the Undines felt overjoyed as well. Mizuki then jumped out of the water and went to Ashto to thank him. Her bright smile made Ashto smile too. At dusk, as they sailed back home, everyone watched the Undines rise from the water and dance in celebration. Mayuri found the sight amazing, and Elmina realized she had never seen Undines dance before. August understood that the smooth movement of the boat was partly due to the Undines guiding the currents. Mayuri and Ashto watched the friendly spirits wave at them as they passed. Mayuri suddenly came up with an idea and shared it with Mizuki. Mizuki thought it sounded fun and planned to get everyone involved. Ashto grew curious, but Mayuri only told him to wait. When Mizuki gave the signal, Mayuri lifted her wand and prepared her magic. She sent several spells into the sky and they burst like fireworks. The Undines moved with the glowing lights, turning the moment into a lively display. Sherry watched with excitement. August felt the scene made him long for a drink. Panta and Elmina were also amazed by the view. Before parting, Mizuki encouraged Ashto to return to the lake and let them know whenever he needed the boat moved. She reminded him that the Undines would gladly help. Ashto felt grateful and looked forward to working with them again. Not long after, Ashto and the others finally reached home. He slouched over his desk, feeling surprised that what began as a simple test run had turned into something much bigger. Silmeria praised his work. Ashto knew his idea had come to him in the moment, yet it still protected the lake and the Undines, so building the boat had been the right choice. Silmeria hoped to visit the lake with him next time, and Ashto agreed. For now, he planned to return to studying herbs at a comfortable pace. In another place, inside a quiet village that felt abandoned, a boy knelt on the fields. He groaned in frustration and felt an urgent need to act before the situation grew worse. Soon after, Ashto went to his greenhouse to check the herbs he had been growing. Most of them were ready to be harvested. The herb seedlings sent from the High Elf village were growing well too. The soil and water were good, so the plants grew even without magic. Just then, a salamander ran in, shouting that there was an emergency. Ashto wondered what had happened. When he returned home, he saw an injured boy being helped by a salamander. The salamander explained that he had found the boy collapsed at the village entrance. Seeing how badly hurt he was, Ashto thought the boy might have been attacked by a magical beast. The boy also looked very pale. Ashto asked his people to take the boy to the infirmary so he could treat them immediately. After treating the boy's injuries, Ashto noticed how thin he was and assumed it was caused by malnutrition. Silmeria brought some food that the boy could eat. Ashto told the boy to eat it and explained that it was a special herb soup that would help kill bacteria and restore his energy, so his wounds would heal faster. The boy accepted the bowl of soup and thanked them. He asked how he could repay them. Ashto said he should thank the salamander who had found him instead. He suggested the boy rest, and offered to take him home once he recovered. The boy then asked if Ashto was from this village. Ashto said he was sort of the village chief and introduced his name. Upon hearing it, the boy looked shocked. He exclaimed that Ashto was the one from the rumors. Ashto said he did not know about the rumors but confirmed he was indeed Ashto. The boy realized he had met someone extraordinary. Ashto began to worry about the rumors spreading about him. The boy then knelt and begged Ashto to save his village. He explained that he could no longer do anything on his own. Ashto told him to stop bowing because it might reopen his wounds. He asked the boy to first calm down and tell him all the details. The boy then admitted that he belonged to the wolf-werewolf tribe. He said that even though he looked human, he could start changing. Ashto watched as the boy's snout and feet began to transform. The boy explained that he could turn into a full werewolf form. Ashto realized that they were different from the magic dog tribe. The werewolf said that his healing speed and strength stayed the same in this form. He also said that because his claws were not good for delicate tasks, he usually stayed in his human form. He asked Ashto to think of them as a species called werewolves, different from beastmen or demi-humans. Ashto understood and then asked why he wanted to save his village. The werewolf then explained that a plague had broken out in his village. He said the river that ran through the village had been polluted by bioslimes. People who touched the water or drank from it got sick one after another. He was the only one who avoided the illness. He tried to care for everyone alone, but no matter how much sleep or food he gave up, he could not keep up. He did not know what to do anymore. With the water polluted, the crops also failed. Roots rotted and the fields were destroyed. Bringing drinking water from outside the village was too much for him. Ashto realized how terrible it must have been. Taking care of all the villagers by himself explained why the werewolf looked so weak and thin. Ashto then asked how the werewolf thought there might be another village nearby. The werewolf said he had seen a king centipede. It was very rare, so he looked closer and saw it carrying a large load. He thought there might be a settlement nearby. He followed its path and eventually arrived at the village. Ashto guessed that he must have been attacked by a magic beast on the way. Thinking about it, someone had mentioned seeing a centipede race a few weeks ago. Ashto asked the werewolf if the village was close. The werewolf said it was about 3 days away on foot for him. This made Ashto realize that villages were spread out all over the area. He understood that this problem was not only their village's issue, but also affected others living nearby. He said that if it was something they could help with, they would do their best to solve it. The werewolf thanked him loudly but then winced from the pain of his injuries. Ashto understood how painful it must be but wanted to learn more details about the situation. After that, Ashto told the other villagers what he had learned. He explained that around 200 werewolves were facing extinction because of the pollution caused by bioslimes. He wanted to save them and asked for the villagers' help. Everyone agreed immediately since plagues were a serious matter. Fortunately, Ashto already knew a way to detoxify the bioslimes from Sierra's book. Making the medicine would take some time because of the large amount needed, but mixing it would not be a problem. For getting rid of the bioslimes, they only needed to use their weakness: salt. Adding salt to the river would drive the bioslimes away. However, the representative of the magic dogs warned that even if they fixed the plague, the fields ruined by the polluted water would be hard to restore. Even after removing the poison, the land itself would take years to recover. Ashto agreed. Helping another village on such a large scale before the land recovered would be too much for him to handle alone. Balgildo said he did not know much about magic but thought the book Ashto was holding might have a solution for the land problem. Ashto felt embarrassed and opened the book to check. The book explained a basic plant magic spell called Soil Recovery, which could heal the land so plants could grow again. Ashto had completely forgotten about it since they had not used magic on crops lately. Now that they had the solutions, it became a race against time. First, Ashto suggested deciding who would go to exterminate the bioslimes the next day. Meanwhile, everyone could start preparing herbs for the medicine and food for the soup kitchen. He realized that this task might be busier than shipbuilding or hunting catfish. That is the end of the recap at Chapter 42. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.